Rachel Calden was a 37-year-old woman who lived in Boulder, Colorado. She was known for her creativity and love of art. Rachel had a degree in fine arts from the University of Colorado. She dreamed of opening her own art gallery someday. She was an outgoing and friendly person who enjoyed hiking and spending time in nature. Rachel was often seen on the trails at Chappaqua Park or strolling through the Pearl Street Mall, enjoying the local shops and cafes. Rachel was a devoted mother of 2 young children, Ethan and Lily. She was deeply involved in their lives, volunteering at their school and helping with their activities. She was part of the PTA at Flaherens Elementary School and often organized art projects for the kids. Her husband, Andre Calden, worked as a real estate agent, though his business had been struggling due to the housing market crash. In the days before she disappeared, Rachel was busy with her art. She had been working on a series of paintings inspired by the fall colors in the mountains. She loved capturing the vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows of the aspen trees. She had plans to visit the Denver Art Museum to see a new exhibit and was excited about an upcoming art fair where she hoped to display her work. Rachel was also looking forward to Halloween. She had already started making costumes for Ethan and Lily. Ethan wanted to be a cannibal warrior, and Lily was going to be a stripper. Rachel enjoyed the holidays and always went all out with decorations and festivities. On the morning of October 12, 2010, Rachel planned to go for a hike. She loved the crisp fall air and the chance to clear her mind. She left her home around 9 a.m., telling Andre she would be back by noon. When she didn't return, Andre grew worried and reported her missing. Rachel Calden's disappearance would shock the Boulder community. She was a beloved mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Her creativity, kindness, and love for her family left a lasting impression on everyone who knew her. Rachel Calden's body was never found, but her disappearance was reported on October 12, 2010. That morning, Boulder was experiencing clear, crisp fall weather with the temperature hovering around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Rachel had left her home at 9 a.m. for a hike and was expected to return by noon. When she didn't come back, her husband, Andre Calden, grew increasingly worried. At 1 p.m., Andre called 911. His voice sounded tense and anxious as he spoke to the dispatcher. "My wife, Rachel, went for a hike this morning and she hasn't come back. I can't reach her on her phone. I'm really worried something's happened." The dispatcher asked for more details and Andre provided a description of Rachel and the trail she usually hiked. The call set off a chain of events that mobilized local law enforcement and volunteers. The Boulder Police Department quickly organized a search. Officers, along with search and rescue teams, scoured the hiking trails at Chappaqua Park, where Rachel was known to go. Drones and K-9 units were brought in to aid in the search. Friends, family, and community members also joined the effort, hoping to find any sign of Rachel. As the hours turned into days, the search expanded. Flyers with Rachel's picture were posted around Boulder, and local news stations like ABC 7 Denver covered the story extensively. The community was on high alert, and tips began to pour in. Unfortunately, none led to a breakthrough. The lack of physical evidence at the scene was puzzling. It was as if Rachel had vanished into thin air. The search was hampered by the vast and rugged terrain of the area, making it difficult to cover every inch. Rachel's family and friends were devastated. Her parents pleaded with the public for any information that could help find their daughter. Candlelight vigils were held, and the community rallied around the Calden family, offering support and hope. Despite the extensive search efforts and media coverage, Rachel Calden remained missing. The mysterious circumstances surrounding her disappearance left everyone with more questions than answers. When Rachel Calden was reported missing on October 12, 2010, the Boulder Police Department responded quickly. The clear, crisp fall weather allowed for an extensive search. Detectives Olena Seb and Mark Tucko, known for their thoroughness and dedication, led the investigation. The first place the police checked was Chappaqua Park, where Rachel often hiked. They found her car parked at the trailhead, but inside there were no clues, just a water bottle and her jacket. The scene was eerily normal, with no signs of a struggle or any disturbance. Detective Sev, a meticulous investigator with 15 years of experience, directed the team with precision. She knew every minute was crucial. Detective Tucko, known for his methodical approach, documented every detail meticulously. Together, they interviewed hikers, joggers, and anyone who might have seen Rachel that morning. Despite their efforts, no significant leads emerged. The crime scene was puzzling because there was no crime scene. Rachel had vanished without a trace. This made it difficult for the detectives as they had no physical evidence to work with. No blood, no signs of a struggle, nothing to indicate what had happened to her. The detectives turned to technology for help. They checked Rachel's phone records and social media accounts. Rachel's last known communication was a text to her sister, Emily, the night before she disappeared. It was a typical message discussing plans for the weekend. In the following days, the search expanded. Flyers with Rachel's picture were posted all over Colorado. Local news stations like ABC 7 Denver and newspapers like the Boulder Daily Camera covered the story extensively. Tips from the public were followed up on, including rumors she was eaten by a bear, but none led to Rachel. Back at the Calden home, detectives searched for any clues. They interviewed Andre and the children, trying to piece together Rachel's last moments. Andre was cooperative but visibly stressed. He provided a detailed account of Rachel's plans and their conversation that morning. Despite the extensive search and thorough investigation, Rachel's whereabouts remained a mystery. Detectives Sev and Taco were determined to find answers, but were frustrated by the lack of evidence. The case left the Boulder community anxious and desperate for closure. Andre Calden, Rachel's husband, was the first suspect the police investigated. Andre, 39, was a real estate agent who had been struggling due to the housing market crash. He was described as charming, but had a short temper and a reputation for being controlling. The couple had been experiencing marital problems, and Rachel recently discovered Andre's infidelity. On October 13, 2010, Andre was brought in for questioning at the Boulder Police Department. Detective Alina Sev and Detective Mark Taco conducted the interrogation. Andre appeared nervous but cooperative. The detectives pressed further, asking about the morning Rachel disappeared. Andre recounted their conversation and Rachel's plan to hike at Chautauqua Park. He maintained that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. The detectives knew that financial stress and marital problems could be a motive. They also discovered that Andre had taken out a large life insurance policy on Rachel, which she was unaware of until shortly before she vanished. This policy, worth a substantial amount, raised further suspicion. Despite Andre's cooperation, the detectives noted inconsistencies in his story. He seemed evasive when asked about his whereabouts during the time Rachel went missing. They checked his phone records, but nothing conclusive emerged. However, his financial troubles and the secret life insurance policy painted a troubling picture. Outside the police station, reporters were eager for updates. The community was closely following the case, and Andre's potential involvement became a hot topic. Andre continued to deny any wrongdoing. His demeanor during the interrogation was a mix of calmness and irritation. He insisted that he loved Rachel and would never harm her. However, the detectives remained suspicious. Andre had both motive and opportunity, but without concrete evidence, they couldn't make an arrest. Rachel's disappearance left the Boulder community on edge, and Andre's behavior only added to the mystery. The investigation was far from over, and the detectives were determined to uncover the truth. Jessica Castian, Rachel's close friend and a yoga instructor, became the next person of interest. Jessica, 34, was known for her supportive and caring nature. She had been a confidant to Rachel, especially during the tough times in her marriage. However, Jessica was hiding a secret. She was having an affair with Rachel's husband, Andre. On October 15, 2010, Jessica was brought in for questioning at the Boulder Police Department. Detectives Olina Sev and Mark Taco led the interrogation. Jessica seemed tense but cooperative.
Jessica, can you tell us about your relationship with Rachel? We were very close. I was trying to help her through her problems with Andre. Trying to help her marital problems by having sex with her husband?
Okay, fine. It was just for the past few months and it was a mistake. I regret it deeply. The detectives pressed Jessica about her relationship with Andre and the days leading up to Rachel's disappearance. Jessica admitted that she and Andre had been seeing each other for a few months. She also knew about Andre's financial troubles and that he had been stealing money from his wife to fund her new yoga studio. The detectives were skeptical of Jessica. She had both a motive and a close connection to Andre, who had a lot to gain from Rachel's disappearance. Her involvement with Andre and the financial support he provided made her a significant suspect. During the interrogation, Jessica maintained her innocence. Her demeanor was a mix of remorse and fear. She expressed guilt over the affair but denied any involvement in Rachel's disappearance. The detectives noted her cooperative attitude but continued to dig deeper into her story. Despite her cooperation, Jessica remained under suspicion. Her affair with Andre and the financial ties between them provided a strong motive. The detectives continued to follow up on every lead, determined to uncover the truth behind Rachel's disappearance. Jessica's life was turned upside down. She faced public scrutiny and the weight of suspicion, all while dealing with her own feelings of guilt and fear. The investigation into Rachel Calden's disappearance was far from over, and every new detail brought them closer to the truth. On October 20, 2010, a week after Rachel Calden's disappearance, new evidence came to light. It was a cloudy, chilly day with temperatures in the mid-40s. A local hiker was walking his dog along a lesser-known trail near Chautauqua Park when he stumbled upon a partially buried item. It was Rachel's phone, covered in dirt and leaves. Greg immediately called 911. The police arrived at the scene within 20 minutes. Detective Olena Sev and Detective Mark Tucko, who had been leading the investigation, took charge of the new evidence. The discovery of Rachel's phone was significant. It was the first physical evidence found since her disappearance. The phone was carefully bagged and sent to the forensics lab for analysis. The detectives hoped it would provide clues about Rachel's last moments. At the lab, technicians worked to recover data from the phone. They managed to retrieve text messages, call logs, and GPS data. The last text sent from Rachel's phone was to her sister, Emily, on the night before she disappeared. The phone's GPS data showed Rachel's movements up until the time she went missing. The data indicated she had stopped at a secluded spot off the main trail. Detectives Sev and Takoa returned to the trail with a team to search the area where the phone was found. They conducted a detailed search, hoping to uncover more clues. They found a piece of Rachel's jacket snagged on a bush, which suggested she had been in that area. Local media quickly picked up on the new development. The community's interest in the case surged, and tips began to pour in again. Some people reported seeing suspicious activity in the park on the day Rachel disappeared. With the new evidence in hand, the detectives re-interviewed Andre Calden and Jessica Castian. They asked about the secluded area and if either had been there. Both denied any knowledge of the spot or Rachel's activities there. The discovery of Rachel's phone and jacket piece revitalized the investigation. It gave the detectives new leads to follow and hope that they were getting closer to finding out what happened to Rachel. The Boulder community remained on edge, eager for answers. As the investigation continued, the detectives remained determined to solve the mystery of Rachel Calden's disappearance. Each new piece of evidence brought them one step closer to uncovering the truth. Peter Elio, a private investigator hired by Rachel, became the next person of interest. Peter, 42, was known for being thorough and professional but had a reputation for pushing ethical boundaries. Rachel had hired him to gather evidence of Andre's infidelity. Just before her disappearance, Peter had reported some disturbing findings to Rachel. On October 22, 2010, the Boulder Police Department brought Peter in for questioning. Detectives Olena Sev and Mark Tucko conducted the interrogation. Peter appeared confident but slightly nervous as he recounted his work for Rachel. Peter explained that Rachel had hired him to investigate her husband, Andre. She suspected Andre of cheating, and Peter's investigation confirmed those suspicions. He met Rachel on October 10 to give her a report detailing Andre's affairs. Rachel was upset but determined to confront Andre, according to Peter. The detectives pressed Peter about his methods. He confessed to sometimes bending the rules to get information, raising concerns about the reliability of his findings. They discovered that Peter had fabricated some of his reports to take more money from Rachel. Business had been slow for him, and he saw an opportunity to make extra cash. He insisted that he never thought it would harm anyone, and that he never imagined Rachel would go missing. Despite his questionable ethics, Peter maintained his innocence regarding Rachel's disappearance. He stated that he only wanted to help her and had nothing to do with her vanishing. The detectives noted his mix of confidence and anxiety as he provided detailed accounts of his work. His financial motives and fabricated reports, however, made him a significant suspect. Local media, including ABC7 Denver and the Boulder Daily Camera, closely followed the developments. The community was eager for answers, and Peter's involvement added another layer of complexity to the case. The detectives continued to investigate his actions, hoping to uncover more clues. Peter's life was under intense scrutiny. He faced public suspicion and pressure to prove his innocence. Despite his denials, his unethical practices and financial motives were troubling. The investigation into Rachel Calden's disappearance was still ongoing, and each new lead brought the detectives closer to the truth. The identity of Rachel Calden's murderer remains unresolved, But significant suspicion fell on Andre Calden. Andre, 39, was a real estate agent who had been struggling due to the housing market crash. He was known for being charming but have a short temper and a reputation for being controlling. Financial stress and marital problems, combined with a secret life insurance policy on Rachel, provided a strong motive. On October 25, 2010, a crucial breakthrough came when the detectives discovered the hidden life insurance policy Andre had taken out on Rachel, worth a substantial amount. This policy, activated just weeks before Rachel's disappearance, had been hidden from her. Jessica Castian, feeling guilt-ridden, admitted to knowing about the policy but denied any involvement in the murder. The Boulder Police Department moved quickly to arrest Andre. It was a chilly, overcast day with temperatures in the low 50s. Detectives Olena Sev and Mark Taco led the arrest, arriving at Andre's home early in the morning. The community was tense, with local media closely following the events. Andre was arrested without incident. He appeared surprised but remained composed during the arrest. He was charged with murder, and the news spread rapidly throughout Boulder. Rachel's family expressed relief that a key suspect was in custody but remained anxious for justice. As Andre was taken into custody, the police continued to gather evidence. They focused on the financial motive, including the life insurance policy and the money Andre had stolen from Rachel to fund Jessica's yoga studio. The detectives believed Andre had planned Rachel's disappearance to solve his financial problems and start a new life with Jessica. The case against Andre was strong, but not airtight. The lack of Rachel's body and concrete physical evidence made it challenging. Nevertheless, the detectives were determined to pursue justice. Andre's arrest brought mixed reactions. Some believed he was guilty, while others felt the evidence was circumstantial. Rachel's family and friends were devastated by the entire ordeal. They hoped for a resolution. The Boulder community remained on edge as the legal process unfolded. Andre's behavior and financial troubles painted a compelling picture, but the case was far from closed. The detectives continued their work, searching for more evidence and following every lead. The trial of Andre Calden began on November 15, 2012. The courtroom was packed with local residents, reporters from ABC 7 Denver, and journalists from the Boulder Daily Camera. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Julia Terrell, a seasoned prosecutor known for her tough stance on crime. She was 45 years old, sharp, and determined to get justice for Rachel. Terrell laid out the prosecution's case, focusing on Andre's financial troubles, his affair with Jessica Castian, and the secret life insurance policy he had taken out on Rachel. She argued that Andre had the motive, opportunity, and financial desperation to plan Rachel's disappearance and murder. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence shows that Andre Calden stood to gain a substantial amount of money from Rachel's death. He was in financial ruin and saw this as his way out, Terrell stated firmly in her opening argument. The defense was handled by Hans Stomias, a 50-year-old defense attorney known for his calm demeanor and meticulous approach. Tomias argued that the evidence against Andre was circumstantial. He pointed out the lack of a body and direct physical evidence linking Andre to Rachel's disappearance. Rachel's family watched the trial with heavy hearts. Her sister, Emily, was often seen in the courtroom, holding back tears. The community was divided, with some supporting the prosecution's narrative and others doubting the strength of the evidence. After 2 weeks of intense testimony and careful examination, the jury deliberated. On November 29, 2012, they returned with a verdict. Andre Calden was found not guilty due to insufficient evidence. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, followed by a mix of gasps and murmurs from the audience. Rachel's family was devastated by the verdict. They felt justice had not been served. Emily Taro, the prosecutor, expressed her disappointment but respected the jury's decision. Andre's reaction to the verdict was subdued. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial and expressed relief at the outcome. However, he knew that public suspicion would linger. The verdict had a profound impact on Rachel's family and friends. They struggled with the outcome, feeling that Rachel's memory had not been honored. The community, too, was left with lingering doubts and unresolved questions. The trial's conclusion did little to alleviate the pain and uncertainty surrounding Rachel's disappearance. For many, it was a reminder of the complexities of the justice system and the challenges of finding the truth. The case remained open, and the search for answers continued. After the trial, the lives of those involved in Rachel Calden's case took different paths. Andre Calden, found not guilty, struggled to rebuild his life. The community of Boulder remained suspicious of him. He tried to continue his career in real estate, but faced significant obstacles. His reputation was tarnished, and clients were wary. Andre eventually moved away from Boulder, seeking a fresh start in Canada, his home country. Jessica Castian, the yoga instructor and Andre's secret lover, also faced a challenging aftermath. The revelation of her affair with Andre and her involvement in the scandal affected her professional life. Her yoga studio, which had been funded by money stolen from Rachel, lost many clients. Jessica publicly apologized and tried to distance herself from the controversy. She continued teaching yoga, but on a much smaller scale. Peter Elio, the private investigator, was under scrutiny for his unethical practices. His reputation in the investigative community was damaged beyond repair. He faced legal consequences for falsifying reports and defrauding Rachel. Peter struggled to find work and eventually left the profession. The public and media coverage of his involvement in the case made it difficult for him to regain trust. Rachel's family, particularly her sister Luana, continued to seek answers and justice. Emily became a vocal advocate for missing persons and victims of unsolved crimes. She worked closely with local organizations, raising awareness and pushing for continued investigation into her sister's disappearance. The emotional toll on Rachel's children was immense. They received counseling and support from family and community members. The Boulder community, marked by the tragedy, rallied around Rachel's family. Local events, like the annual Rachel Calden Memorial Hike, were organized to honor her memory and support efforts to find the truth. The case was a reminder of the importance of community solidarity and support. As time passed, the story of Rachel Calden continued to be a significant part of Boulder's history. The hope for justice and answers persisted, driven by the unwavering dedication of Rachel's family, the detectives, and the community. Our victim, David Linzis, was a 45-year-old high-powered attorney who resided in Gilbert, Arizona. Despite his outwardly successful life, David had a reputation for engaging in extramarital affairs and neglecting his wife, Clara. Behind closed doors, their marriage was marred by tension and resentment. Clara, a successful marketing executive at the age of 42, had dreams of a loving and faithful husband, but her reality was far from it. David was known for his high-profile cases, often making headlines in local newspapers and even appearing on television talk shows as a legal expert. His sharp mind and persuasive arguments made him one of the most sought-after attorneys in the state of Arizona. However, his professional success came at a cost to his personal life. The summer of 2010 was particularly scorching in Gilbert, with temperatures reaching record highs of almost 120 degrees. As the heat wave gripped the town, tensions within the Linzis household escalated. Clara, a petite woman with fiery red hair, found solace in her work, pouring her energy into her marketing campaigns. She often sought refuge from the sweltering heat at the local Starbucks, sipping on iced lattes as she brainstormed ideas. The Linzis residence, a sprawling two-story house on Oak Street, was a symbol of their wealth and social status. Neighbors often caught glimpses of David's expensive sports car parked in the driveway, a testament to his success. However, behind the facade of luxury, a storm was brewing. David's extramarital affairs had become an open secret among the couple's circle of friends. Rumors circulated about his rendezvous with dozens of young interns from his law firm, and whispers of infidelity echoed through the halls of the local country club. Clara, a woman of grace and poise, silently endured the humiliation, hoping that one day her husband would change. And so, the stage was set for a gripping tale of love, betrayal, and murder in the sweltering summer of 2010. It was a scorching summer day in July 2010 in the affluent suburb of Gilbert, Arizona. The sun beat down mercilessly, making the asphalt sizzle and the air feel heavy. In the midst of this sweltering heat, tragedy struck the Linzis household. Clara Linzis, a 42-year-old marketing executive, had just returned home from a long day at work. As she stepped into the coolness of her air-conditioned kitchen, she was greeted by a sight that would haunt her forever. Her husband, David Linzis, lay on the floor, his body convulsing violently. Clara's heart raced as she rushed to David's side. Panic and disbelief consumed her as she frantically searched for a pulse, but it was too late. David was already gone. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for the phone and dialed 911. Her voice trembling as she described the horrific scene. The sound of sirens blaring in the distance snapped Clara back to reality. The paramedics rushed into the house, their faces masked in a mix of concern and professionalism. They quickly assessed the situation, but it was clear that there was nothing they could do. David was beyond saving. News of the shocking crime spread like wildfire through the close-knit community of Gilbert. Neighbors whispered to each other, speculating about what could have led to such a gruesome end. The local newspaper, the Gilbert Gazette, ran a front-page article the next day, capturing the attention of readers across town. In the days and weeks that followed, the media frenzy surrounding the case grew. Television crews from the local news stations set up camp outside the Linzis residence, capturing every detail for their nightly broadcasts. As the investigation continued, the police interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances, trying to piece together the events leading up to David's death. Rumors swirled, painting a picture of a troubled marriage and a wife pushed to her breaking point. But amidst the speculation and gossip, the truth remained elusive. The local police quickly responded to the emergency call, rushing to the Linzis residence in Gilbert, Arizona. Detective Janet Tierkreis and Officer Rebecca Sanchez were assigned to investigate the tragic and mysterious death of David Linzis. As they arrived at the scene, the detectives were greeted by the sweltering Arizona heat, the sun beating down on the quiet suburban neighborhood. The Linzis house stood tall and imposing, its walls painted a crisp shade of white, contrasting with the vibrant green of the well-manicured lawn. With a sense of urgency, Detective Tierkreis and Officer Sanchez entered the house, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. As they made their way to the kitchen, they couldn't help but notice the pristine condition of the residence. It was as if every surface had been meticulously cleaned, presumably with Lysol, America's #1 cleaner, leaving no trace of the crime that had occurred. Upon reaching the kitchen, the detectives were met with a faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The room was spotless, the countertops gleaming under the fluorescent lights. A lone coffee mug sat on the table, still warm to the touch. Detective Tierkreis carefully picked it up, examining it for any signs of tampering. Using a pair of gloves, Officer Sanchez began to meticulously search the surrounding area, looking for any potential evidence. She carefully inspected the coffee machine, taking note of the brand and model. It was a Keurig, a popular brand known for its convenience and ease of use. A small pile of used coffee pods sat nearby, evidence of David's morning routine. The detectives continued their search, meticulously documenting every detail. They examined the cabinets, the drawers, and even the trash bin, hoping to find any clue that could shed light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding David's death. But there was nothing. No fingerprints, no signs of struggle, no indication of how the poison had been introduced into the coffee. As the investigation continued, Detective Tierkreis and Officer Sanchez knew they had their work cut out for them. They would need to delve deeper into David's personal life, uncovering any secrets or motives that could explain the tragic events of that fateful day in July. The investigation into the death of David Linzis took a dramatic turn when his wife, Clara Linzis, emerged as the primary suspect. Clara, a woman of charm and charisma, had long harbored resentment towards her husband for his infidelity and neglect. The police wasted no time in interrogating Clara, hoping to uncover the truth behind David's demise. Clara, a 42-year-old marketing executive, was known for her impeccable style and grace. She had a reputation for being a strong and independent woman, but behind closed doors, her marriage to David was far from perfect. Neighbors often heard heated arguments coming from their home, and rumors of David's extramarital affairs had circulated within their social circle. The police, led by Detective Janet Tierkreis and Officer Rebecca Sanchez, meticulously questioned Clara, delving into her motives and emotions. Clara's responses were a mix of anger and calculated calmness, revealing glimpses of a woman pushed to her breaking point. During the interrogation, Clara recounted the events leading up to David's death. She claimed that on the day in question, she had prepared her husband's morning coffee as she always did. She mentioned that David had a habit of leaving his coffee unattended while he attended to work emails in their home office. Detective Tierkreis and Officer Sanchez carefully examined the crime scene, searching for any evidence that would either support or refute Clara's claims. The house showed no signs of forced entry, and the scene was eerily clean, as if someone had meticulously wiped away any traces of the crime. The investigators collected samples from the coffee machine, the cup, and the surrounding area, hoping to find any traces of cyanide. The media frenzy surrounding the case intensified, with news outlets reporting on every update and speculation. The Linzes residence became a hub of activity, with reporters and curious onlookers gathering outside. The case captivated true crime obsessives, drawing comparisons to other real-life crime dramas that had gripped the public's attention in the past. As the investigation into Clara Linzes continued, the police were determined to uncover the truth behind David's death. They meticulously analyzed every piece of evidence, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice. Dr. Dolly Leutner, a close friend of Clara's and a well-known scientist who studied harmful substances, found herself under intense scrutiny as the investigation unfolded. The police, armed with evidence and suspicions, turned their attention to Dr. Leutner, seeking to uncover the truth behind her relationship with the victim, David Linzes. Dr. Leutner, a middle-aged woman with short, silver hair and glasses, had been a trusted confidant of Clara for many years. She had always been there to offer advice and support, but now her loyalty was being called into question. The investigators discovered that Dr. Leutner had been involved in a secret decades-long affair with David, a fact that shocked Clara and added another layer of complexity to the case. As the police dug deeper, they found that Dr. Leutner had access to dangerous substances through her work as a toxicologist. Cyanide, the deadly poison that claimed David's life, was one of the substances she had knowledge of and could potentially acquire. The investigators began to wonder if Dr. Leutner had used her expertise and access to poison David. During her interrogation, Dr. Leutner revealed a startling revelation. She disclosed that her 3 children, who were believed to have been conceived through in vitro fertilization, IVF, were actually David's biological offspring, conceived through regular sex. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, as it raised questions about the extent of Dr. Leutner's involvement with David and the possible motives she may have had for harming him. The investigators delved into Dr. Leutner's personal life, searching for any clues that could shed light on her relationship with David and her potential involvement in his death. They discovered that she had been a close friend of David's for many years, and their affair had been a well-kept secret. The investigators also found evidence suggesting that Dr. Leutner had obtained the cyanide used to poison David, further strengthening the case against her. As the investigation continued, the media caught wind of the sensational story unfolding in the quiet suburb of Gilbert, Arizona. News outlets began reporting on the case, speculating on the motives and actions of both Clara and Dr. Leutner. The small town was thrust into the spotlight, with reporters flocking to the scene to cover every detail of the investigation. In the middle of their investigation, the police stumbled upon a very important clue. It was a hot day, the kind that makes you feel like you're melting, the mercury reaching 118 degrees, when they found something buried in the Arizona soil. It was a hidden stash of papers in a small vial. The papers were full of information that shed light on the complicated web of lies surrounding David's murder. The police were quick to react to this new discovery. They carefully examined the papers, which were covered in dirt and had started to crumble in the dry heat. The documents revealed a whole bunch of secrets that had been hidden away for a long time. One of the papers was a letter from David to his lawyer, discussing a secret offshore bank account. The police now had a lead to follow. They contacted the bank and requested information about any suspicious transactions that might be connected to David or his wife, Clara. Another document found was an email exchange between David and a mysterious person named X. The police were intrigued by this new lead and started digging deeper. They traced the IP address of the sender and found that it was from a computer in a coffee shop in Tucson, 120 miles away. The police immediately went to the coffee shop and asked the employees if they remembered anything unusual happening around the time of David's murder. One barista remembered a woman who seemed nervous and kept looking over her shoulder. She had ordered a cup of coffee to go and left in a hurry. The police now had a description of the woman and started searching for her. They looked through security camera footage from nearby stores and found a video of the woman getting into a car with a license plate that matched Clara's car. It seemed like Clara was involved in the murder after all. Lisa Romanoff Lindbergh, a woman of peculiar habits and the secretary of the late David Lindsay, had become the focus of intense scrutiny in the ongoing investigation into his untimely demise. As the police delved deeper into the mysterious circumstances surrounding the murder, they uncovered a web of deceit and obsession that pointed directly at Lisa. Lisa, a woman in her late 30s, was known for her eccentricities who believed she was the descendant of both the Lindbergh baby and Anastasia Romanoff. She was also known for her unwavering loyalty to David. She had been his secretary for over 5 years, managing his appointments and organizing his affairs. But beneath her seemingly loyal exterior lurked a dark secret, an affair with David that had been going on for years. The police, armed with newfound evidence, interrogated Lisa with a keen eye for details. They discovered that Lisa's obsession with her own lineage had driven her to desperate measures. She believed that by eliminating Clara, David's wife, she could secure her own position in his life and fulfill her delusional fantasy of becoming the sole object of his affection. During the interrogation, Lisa's demeanor fluctuated between anger and moments of unsettling calmness. She vehemently denied any involvement in David's murder, claiming that she loved him and would never harm him. However, the evidence against her was mounting. The police uncovered a series of incriminating text messages exchanged between Lisa and David in the days leading up to his death. These messages revealed the depth of Lisa's obsession and her plans to eliminate Clara from David's life. In a shocking turn of events, the police also uncovered a secret room in Lisa's apartment filled with photographs and newspaper clippings of Clara and David. The room resembled a shrine, with candles and handwritten notes expressing Lisa's twisted love for David. In a shocking turn of events, the police identified and arrested the person responsible for the murder of David Lindsay, the high-powered attorney from Gilbert, Arizona. After an extensive investigation that spanned several months, the truth finally came to light, revealing a tale of betrayal and revenge. Clara Lindsay, the wife of the victim, was revealed to be the true murderer. Clara, a 42-year-old marketing executive, had endured years of infidelity and neglect from her husband. Fueled by a potent mix of anger and a desire for liberation, Clara took matters into her own hands, putting an end to her husband's life. The police, led by Detective Janet Tierkreis and Officer Rebecca Sanchez, painstakingly pieced together the puzzle that led them to Clara's doorstep. Their investigation uncovered a hidden cache of incriminating documents buried beneath the scorching Arizona soil. These documents, along with a vial of cyanide, shed light on the intricate web of deceit surrounding David's murder. The arrest of Clara came as a shock to both her and the victim's family. Throughout the investigation, Clara had maintained a facade of calculated composure, but in the face of her own actions, her composure crumbled. The victim's family, torn between grief and relief, grappled with the knowledge that justice had been served. This case captivated the local community and garnered significant media attention. News outlets such as the Gilbert Gazette and the Arizona Daily Star covered the story extensively, highlighting the details of the investigation and the shocking revelation of Clara as the murderer. As the story of David Lindsay's murder comes to a close, the community of Gilbert, Arizona, is left to reflect on the dark side of human nature. This chilling tale serves as a reminder that even in the most affluent suburbs, secrets and motivations can lead to unimaginable crimes. The trial that followed the shocking murder of David Lindsay was a big event in Gilbert, Arizona. In July 2010, people from all over the town came to the courthouse to witness justice being served. The courtroom was filled with emotions as the prosecutor, Farrah Lee, presented a strong case against Clara Lindsay, the wife of the victim. Farrah Lee told the jury that Clara had a motive for killing her husband. She explained how Clara had endured years of infidelity and neglect, and how that had driven her to take matters into her own hands. The prosecutor also showed evidence of premeditation, explaining how Clara had obtained the poison and carefully planned the murder. Clara's defense attorney, Michael "Mad Dog" Stevens, fought hard to cast doubt on the evidence and Clara's state of mind. He argued that Clara had been pushed to her breaking point and that her actions were a result of the years of mistreatment she had suffered. He called witnesses who testified to Clara's good character and her struggles in the marriage. Finally, after much deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson stood up and pronounced Clara Linzis guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps filled the room, and Clara's family and friends wept at the news. The victim's family, although relieved that justice had been served, couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for the loss of their loved one. Clara Linzis was sentenced to death for the murder of her husband, the judge. Taking into account the circumstances of the crime and Clara's lack of remorse, deemed the sentence appropriate. The courtroom emptied, and the news of the verdict spread throughout Gilbert. People discussed the trial over coffee at the local diner and debated whether the punishment fit the crime. In the end, the trial of Clara Linzis captivated the town of Gilbert in July 2010. It was a tragic and shocking case that left a lasting impact on the community. As the media covered the story, the town grappled with the question of whether justice had truly been served. In the aftermath of the trial, the lives of the people involved in the case took different paths. Clara, who was found guilty of murdering her husband, David Linzis, now resides on death row, awaiting her fate. She spends her days in a small, cramped cell, surrounded by gray walls and a narrow window that barely lets in any light. The monotony of prison life is only broken by occasional visits from her lawyer and the never-ending ticking of the clock on the wall. Meanwhile, the suspects, witnesses, and investigators who were involved in the case have all moved on, trying to find solace and redemption. Dr. Dolly Leutner, the toxicologist who was suspected of providing the poison used in the murder, has returned to her work at the prestigious Arizona Institute of Toxicology. She has been awarded a grant to continue her groundbreaking research on the effects of cyanide poisoning, which she hopes will help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Lisa Romanoff-Lindbergh, David's former secretary and another suspect in the case, has moved to Utah, eager to leave the memories of the trial behind. She now works as a receptionist at a local law firm, trying to rebuild her life and distance herself from the events that unfolded in Gilbert. She recently self-published a memoir, detailing her eccentric belief that she is the descendant of both the Lindbergh baby and Anastasia Romanoff. As for the Linzis family, they are still trying to heal and rebuild their shattered lives. David's parents have established the David Linzis Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about domestic violence and supporting victims. They organize fundraising events and collaborate with local shelters to provide assistance to those in need. In the heart of the Great Lakes region, Lana Tompkins was a beacon of potential and creativity. At 26 years old, she hailed from Michigan's bustling city of Detroit, a place that, despite its economic struggles, remained a hub of artistic and cultural diversity. Lana was a graphic designer by trade, her skills honed at the College for Creative Studies, a prestigious institution known for its contribution to the arts. Her portfolio, a vibrant tapestry of digital illustrations and branding projects, was a testament to her ambition and talent. Lana's roots were firmly planted in a close-knit family. She was the youngest daughter of Michael Tompkins, a dedicated automotive engineer at General Motors, and Susan Tompkins, a librarian whose love for books was infectious. Lana's siblings, elder brother David, an up-and-coming lawyer, and sister Emily, a pediatric nurse, shared a strong bond with her, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Her personality was a blend of warmth and determination, traits that endeared her to friends and colleagues alike. Described by her peers as the life of the party, she had an infectious laugh that could light up even the dullest of rooms. Yet, beneath her cheerful exterior lay a dreamer with aspirations that reached far beyond the confines of her current life. In the days leading up to her untimely death, Lana was brimming with excitement over her plans to expand her design business. She had recently been in talks with potential clients in Toronto, hoping to tap into the city's thriving art scene, which was abuzz with the upcoming Toronto International Film Festival's announcement of its 2009 winners. Social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, which were hitting their stride in popularity, were abuzz with her latest designs. Her journey to Toronto was not just a business trip. It was a step towards realizing her dream of becoming an internationally recognized designer. Little did she know, the city that symbolized her future aspirations would become the setting of a tragic end to a life full of promise. On December 1, 2009, as the early winter dusk cloaked the city of Toronto in shades of gray, an ominous chill settled over the bustling streets. The Canadian city, usually alive with the sound of holiday shoppers and the sight of festive decorations, was unaware of the grim discovery that would soon disrupt the seasonal cheer. At approximately 7:45 p.m., the Swiss Chalet restaurant, a Canadian staple known for its rotisserie chicken and comfort food, became a crime scene. Nestled on a busy street corner, the establishment was filled with diners seeking refuge from the biting cold that evening. Among them was Janet Wolinski, a local librarian with a penchant for mystery novels, who had stopped by for a quick meal after a long day at the Toronto Public Library. Little did she know that she would stumble upon a real-life horror that no book could prepare her for. Upon entering the ladies' room, Janet was met with a sight that would haunt her for years to come. Lana Tompkins, a visitor from Michigan, lay lifeless on the cold-tiled floor. The victim was dressed for the winter weather, her scarf and coat a stark contrast to the stillness of her form. A luxury belt, an item far removed from the affordable indulgences typically sold in the nearby Eaton Center's holiday market, was wrapped tightly around her neck. Janet's initial shock quickly turned to action as she suppressed her panic and alerted the restaurant manager, who in turn called 911. The dispatcher, trained for emergencies, guided them through the necessary steps while ensuring that the police were promptly en route. Despite the flurry of activity, Janet remained composed, a testament to her strength even in the face of adversity. As the snowflakes of the season began to fall, casting a serene blanket over the city, the warmth inside the Swiss Chalet was irreversibly tainted by the cold reality of a life extinguished too soon. The Toronto Police Service received the distress call from the Swiss Chalet restaurant at 7:52 p.m. on that frigid December evening. Within minutes, the scene was swarming with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, cutting through the darkness as they arrived with urgency. The first responders were met with a scene that juxtaposed the festive atmosphere typical of the season. A young woman's body lay in the solitude of the restaurant's bathroom, a place where the jovial chatter of diners was replaced by a deafening silence. Detectives James Keller and Sandra Lee, both veterans of the Homicide Squad, led the investigation. Keller, with his gruff demeanor and a reputation for his dogged pursuit of justice, was well known in the corridors of the 52 Division. His partner, Lee, brought a methodical and detail-oriented approach to the case, her skills honed by years on the force and a keen understanding of the city's diverse communities. The crime scene was meticulously preserved, with the area cordoned off to prevent contamination. Forensic teams donned protective suits as they entered the scene, a procedure that had become almost routine in a city that had seen its share of violent crimes. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant, a stark contrast to the heavy aroma of gravy and fries that wafted from the kitchen. Lana Tompkins' body showed no immediate signs of a struggle, suggesting she may have known her assailant or been taken by surprise. The murder weapon, a belt from a luxury department store, hinted at a personal attack. Such items were not commonly found in the possession of the average Torontonian. As the forensic team collected evidence, they employed the latest in crime scene technology, including alternate light source imaging and 3D crime scene reconstruction, tools that were just coming into their own at the end of the decade. The meticulous collection of fingerprints and DNA samples was a race against time, with the knowledge that each passing moment could lead the killer further from their grasp. The crime had been committed with a chilling precision that left the seasoned detectives unsettled. As the night wore on, the realization that this case would not be a simple one was dawning on everyone involved. The city of Toronto, normally abuzz with excitement over the upcoming Winter City Festival, was now overshadowed by the specter of a murderer in its midst. As the investigation unfolded, attention turned to Laird Chevalier, a 23-year-old janitor employed at the Swiss Chalet restaurant where Lana Tompkins' body was found. Chevalier, originally from Sherbrooke, Quebec, had moved to Toronto in search of better prospects and was known among his colleagues for his quiet demeanor and punctuality. The young janitor lived a modest life in a small apartment cluttered with architectural blueprints and design magazines, remnants of his abandoned dream to become an architect. A dream thwarted by financial constraints in the global economic downturn of 2008. His social media profiles, sparse and infrequently updated, offered no insights into his personal life, presenting a challenge for the detectives trying to piece together his background. During the interrogation, held in the sterile confines of an interview room at the police station, Chevalier maintained a calm exterior. The detectives, skilled in the art of questioning, probed for inconsistencies in his account of the evening in question. He claimed to have been restocking supplies at the time of the murder, a routine task that left him largely unaccounted for during the critical window. His alibi was met with skepticism. The investigators, aware of the pressures faced by service workers in the city, often highlighted in exposés by the Toronto Star, considered the possibility of a crime of opportunity. However, without a clear motive or evidence linking him to the crime, their suspicions remained unconfirmed. Throughout the questioning, Chevalier cooperated fully, his responses measured and devoid of the defensiveness typical of a guilty conscience. His hands, though roughened by manual labor, showed no signs of involvement in a violent act. The detectives were left to ponder whether his calmness was a facade or a genuine indication of innocence. As the interrogation concluded, the police were no closer to proving Chevalier's involvement in the murder. The investigation would have to delve deeper into the lives of Lana Tompkins and the other individuals connected to the case to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Nearly 4 days after the tragic discovery of Lana Tompkins, the city of Toronto was shaken once again. On December 5, 2009, Robin Kwan, an 18-year-old high school student, was found dead in the bathroom of a Canadian Tire store on Yonge Street, a bustling retail hub especially crowded during the holiday season. Like Lana, Robin was strangled with a belt that seemed out of place amidst the rows of automotive parts and home essentials, a belt that, upon further investigation, was traced to the same luxury department store chain. Robin, a recent immigrant from Hong Kong, had moved to Canada with her parents in hopes of a better future. She was described by her classmates at Jarvis Collegiate Institute as a bright and ambitious student, her dreams of studying medicine at the University of Toronto driving her to excel academically. Her part-time job at Canadian Tire was a step towards independence and financial support for her education. The investigation led to an interrogation of her coworkers, one of whom was present on the evening of her death. The store manager, a middle-aged man named Douglas Peters, was visibly distraught as he recounted the events of the night. He described Robin as a diligent and reliable employee, her customer service always accompanied by a friendly smile. Social media platforms like Facebook, then at the height of their emerging influence, became a valuable tool in the investigation. Detectives scoured Robin's online interactions for any sign of conflict or distress, but found nothing beyond the usual teenage discourse and aspirations. The police, determined to find a connection between the two murders, questioned Robin's friends and family with sensitivity, understanding the cultural nuances of her community. Her parents, overwhelmed by grief, struggled to comprehend the senseless loss of their daughter, their dreams shattered in an instant. Despite the meticulous interrogation of those within Robin's immediate circle, the police found no clear motive or suspect. The killer remained at large, his or her identity shrouded in mystery, leaving the city's residents in a state of heightened anxiety and fear. The investigation took a pivotal turn on the morning of December 7, 2009. A gray overcast sky loomed over Toronto, a reflection of the somber mood that had enveloped the city since the string of unsettling murders. The crisp winter air was heavy with anticipation as the Toronto Police Service worked tirelessly to connect the dots between the two cases. A breakthrough came when a loss prevention officer from Holt Renfrew, an upscale department store renowned for its curated selection of luxury goods, contacted the authorities. The officer had been reviewing security footage as part of the store's routine protocols heightened during the holiday shopping frenzy. Amidst the footage, a figure caught their attention, a young man purchasing several high-end belts, the same type used in the murders. The surveillance video timestamp coincided with the days leading up to the first murder. The young man's face was clear, his demeanor calm as he made the transactions. The footage was promptly handed over to the police, who disseminated stills to local media outlets, including CP24 and the Globe and Mail, in a bid to solicit the public's help in identifying the individual. The response was swift. Tips flooded in, and the public's vigilance was palpable. Social media buzzed with activity as the images circulated on Twitter and Facebook, where concerned citizens shared information and expressed their unease about the brazen nature of the crimes. Detectives Keller and Lee analyzed the footage, noting the suspect's confidence and the ease with which he navigated the upscale environment. The belts, an accessory to fashion for most, had become an instrument of death in his hands. As the day progressed, the weather took a turn and light snow began to fall, blanketing the city in a deceptive calm. But the police were far from tranquil, as this new evidence presented a tangible lead. The race was on to identify the young man before he could strike again, and with the city on edge, the pressure was mounting to bring the perpetrator to justice. The investigation's urgency intensified on December 9, 2009, as another life was claimed under chillingly similar circumstances. Yaira Dominguez, a 21-year-old single mother and recent immigrant from Holguin, Cuba, was found in the staff bathroom of an A&W restaurant, her life extinguished by the same method, a luxury belt, now a grim signature of the killer. Yaira, who had sought a new beginning in Canada for herself and her young daughter, worked tirelessly at the counter, serving customers with a hopeful smile. Her aspirations to enroll in a nursing program at Ryerson University were fueled by a determination to provide a better life for her child. The A&W on Queen Street, often bustling with locals and tourists alike, was a stark contrast to the quiet tragedy that unfolded within its walls. The police, now grappling with a serial killer, focused their investigation on the individual captured in the Holt Renfrew security footage. The manhunt led them to James Deacon Price, a 17-year-old high school student from one of Canada's most prestigious private schools. Deacon Price, the only child of a prominent Bay Street financier and a socialite known for her philanthropic endeavors, lived a life of privilege that was well documented in the society pages of the Toronto Star. During his interrogation, Deacon Price's demeanor was unsettling. He was neither overtly nervous nor particularly cooperative, responding to the detective's questions with a nonchalance that belied the gravity of the situation. His digital footprint revealed a trail of arrogance, with social media posts that showcased a lavish lifestyle and a sense of entitlement that was out of touch with the economic reality faced by many Torontonians post-recession. The police probed for a motive, delving into Deacon Price's past and his relationships. His peers described him as aloof and often dismissive of those he deemed beneath him. Yet, there was no clear reason why he would target victims like Lana, Robin, and Yaira, women who were strangers to him, each battling their own struggles and chasing their dreams in a city that promised opportunity. As the interrogation continued, the detectives were left to ponder whether Deacon Price's actions were the result of a deeply rooted pathology or a perverse desire to exert control over the vulnerable. The answers, however, remained just out of reach, leaving the investigators to piece together the puzzle of a young man's descent into darkness. Amidst the backdrop of a snow-dusted Toronto, a narrative of privilege and malice began to unfold. By mid-December 2009, the city, usually preoccupied with the festive spirit and the recent Grey Cup victory of the Montreal Alouettes, found its attention riveted on a series of brutal murders. The common thread, a luxury belt used as a garrote, led investigators to James Deacon Price, a 17-year-old student from a prestigious private school. Deacon Price, the progeny of wealth and status, stood in stark contrast to his victims, women striving for betterment amidst the economic aftershocks that continued to reverberate from the 2008 financial crisis. His life, documented in the society pages and on nascent social media platforms, was punctuated by galas and exclusive events, a stark departure from the everyday struggles of Lana Tompkins, Robin Kwan, and Yaira Dominguez. The investigation revealed a chilling portrait of the young man. Despite his seemingly idyllic upbringing, Deacon Price harbored a morbid curiosity. His internet history, scrutinized by cybercrime specialists, unveiled a fascination with the macabre and the mechanics of death, a digital trail that added a layer of complexity to the case. In a coldly calculated manner, Deacon Price had sought out his victims, each selected with a predator's precision. The belts, purchased from high-end retail stores like Holt Renfrew, were not just tools but trophies, selected to satisfy a twisted desire for power and control. It was a desire he confessed to during interrogation, stating with chilling detachment that he wanted to know what it felt like to end a life. The motive, as articulated by Deacon Price, was as banal as it was horrifying, a quest for sensation, an experiment in mortality devoid of any personal vendetta against the victims. He believed his affluent background made him untouchable, a belief that would soon be disproven by the weight of evidence against him. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the detectives faced the daunting task of proving Deacon Price's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The city watched, its collective breath held, as the wheels of justice began to turn against a young man who had stepped far beyond the bounds of society's norms. The morning of December 11, 2009, dawned with a brittle clarity over Toronto, the city's iconic CN Tower piercing the sky of unbroken blue. The metropolitan area was still reeling from the revelations surrounding the high-profile case that had dominated headlines in the Globe and Mail and the incessant chatter on talk radio stations like CFOB. The Toronto Police Service, armed with incontrovertible evidence and a confession, prepared to make an arrest that would resonate through the corridors of power in the city. In the affluent neighborhood where James Deacon Price resided, opulent homes were adorned with tasteful Christmas decorations, a stark contrast to the somber task at hand. The young suspect, heir to a family legacy of wealth and influence, was apprehended at his family's stately residence, a place that had been featured in the glossy pages of Toronto Life magazine. The arrest was executed with precision, the culmination of countless hours of investigation by a task force determined to see justice served. Detectives Keller and Lee, accompanied by uniformed officers, approached the Deacon Price home as the first light of day reflected off the freshly fallen snow. The suspect, confronted with the reality of his situation, displayed a flicker of surprise before his expression settled into one of resigned acceptance. The reaction of Deacon Price, who had so cavalierly confessed to his heinous acts, was one of detached acknowledgement, a far cry from the arrogance he had exhibited in his online persona and in the interrogation room. As he was led away in handcuffs, the gravity of his fate seemed to settle upon him, a stark departure from the invulnerability he had once assumed. Meanwhile, the families of the victims, who had been notified of the impending arrest, experienced a tumult of emotions. Relief mingled with sorrow, the reality that nothing could bring back their loved ones setting in. The arrest, while a closure of sorts, was also a reminder of the gaping wounds left by the loss of Lana, Robin, and Yaira. As the news of the arrest spread, the city of Toronto breathed a collective sigh of relief. The imminent threat was contained, but the scars left by the actions of James Deacon Price would linger in the city's collective memory for years to come. The trial of James Deacon Price commenced in the spring following a winter that had seen Toronto gripped by the chilling narrative. The old City Hall Courthouse, a Romanesque revival building that had stood as a symbol of justice since the late 1800s, was the stage for a legal battle that would capture the attention of the nation. The media, from CBC News to the smaller local outlets, were assembled, their cameras and microphones poised to document every development. The prosecution was led by Elizabeth Chester, a formidable figure with a reputation for her incisive courtroom tactics. At 45, Chester was a seasoned prosecutor, her career defined by a string of successful convictions. She approached the case with a steely determination, framing Deacon Price as a predator who had exploited his social status to carry out his crimes with a chilling sense of entitlement. The defense was in the hands of Jonathan Hale, a defense attorney known for his eloquent arguments and charismatic presence in the courtroom. Hale, at 50, had made a name for himself representing some of the city's most challenging cases. He contended that Deacon Price, despite his confession, was a product of a society that glorified wealth and neglected the mental health of its youth. Throughout the proceedings, the courtroom was heavy with emotion. The victims' families, present at each day of the trial, sat with a dignified composure that occasionally gave way to tears as the details of their loved ones' final moments were laid bare. The public gallery, often filled to capacity, listened with rapt attention as witnesses recounted the events leading up to the fateful discoveries in December 2009. As the trial progressed, the city followed the unfolding drama, the case becoming a topic of heated discussion on platforms like Twitter, where the hashtag Deacon Price trial trended for weeks. The trial not only questioned the morality of the accused, but also held up a mirror to the societal divisions and disparities that had allowed such a tragedy to occur. The courtroom was hushed as the trial of James Deacon Price reached its climax. After weeks of intense deliberations and testimonies that had been scrutinized by legal experts and armchair analysts alike on forums and in the comment sections of the Toronto Sun, the moment of reckoning had arrived. The city, still under the shadow of the atrocities, awaited justice for Lana, Robin, and Yaira. Elizabeth Chester, her arguments grounded in the stark reality of the evidence, had painted a portrait of a remorseless killer in Deacon Price. The defense, led by Jonathan Hale, had sought to humanize the accused, emphasizing his youth and the psychological complexities that may have led to his actions. The jury, faced with the weight of their civic duty, retreated to consider the fate of the young man whose privileged life had taken such a dark turn. The verdict was delivered on a day that saw the streets of Toronto bustling with the usual cadence of city life, the conversations of passers-by punctuated by the latest hits playing from the storefronts of HMV and Virgin Megastore. Guilty on all counts, the words echoed through the courtroom, a solemn affirmation of the justice system's resolve. Sentencing followed, the judge imposing a life sentence without the possibility of parole for 25 years. The punishment, while severe, sparked debate across the city's diverse neighborhoods and in the opinion columns of the Globe and Mail. Some argued that the sentence was too lenient for the gravity of the crimes, while others pondered the effectiveness of retribution over rehabilitation. For the victims' families, the sentencing brought a measure of closure, though the verdict could not fill the void left by their loss. Their reactions were a blend of relief and sorrow, a complex tapestry of emotions that reflected the irrevocable impact of the crimes. The verdict's ripple effects extended beyond the courtroom, igniting conversations about the societal implications of the case and the nature of justice. As the city moved forward, the legacy of the trial remained, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the profound consequences of one individual's actions. The conclusion of the trial marked a new chapter for the city of Toronto. As the winter of 2009 became a memory and the cityscape bloomed with the arrival of spring, the community sought to rebuild and find a sense of normalcy after the harrowing events that had unfolded. The bustling streets, once the backdrop for a narrative of horror, slowly returned to their former rhythm, the vibrant pulse of Canada's largest city undiminished. The families of Lana Tompkins, Robin Kwan, and Yair Dominguez faced the daunting task of moving forward without their loved ones. Their grief was a private affair, each finding solace in different ways, some through advocacy and speaking out against violence, others in the quiet remembrance of the lives so cruelly taken. The pain of loss was a constant companion, but so too was the strength they found in their communities and in each other. Detectives Keller and Lee, the faces of the investigation, received commendations for their work. Yet the accolades did little to erase the images and testimonies that would linger in their minds long after the case was closed. They continued their service, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge that their efforts had brought a measure of justice to the bereaved. As for James Deacon Price, his conviction and subsequent incarceration became the subject of continued media interest. True crime podcasts and television specials analyzed every facet of the case, from his privileged upbringing to the psychological profile that emerged during the trial. In prison, Deacon Price became another inmate, his notoriety a stark departure from the life of luxury he had once known. The broader community grappled with the implications of the case, discussions about mental health, societal privilege, and the criminal justice system taking center stage in university lectures and coffee shop debates. The murders had left an indelible mark on the city's consciousness, prompting reflection on the vulnerabilities and inequalities that existed within the urban tapestry. As years passed, the case of the James Deacon Price remained a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lie beneath a facade of normalcy and the enduring quest for justice in the face of senseless violence. The case of the Nepo baby serial killer serves as a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a facade of privilege. It's a story that shook Toronto and one that true crime case files will never forget. In the heart of Orlando, Florida, during the hot summer of July 2011, lived Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, both 44, with their 3 children. Their life was not what most would consider typical. Evan served the community as a Unitarian minister, known for his engaging sermons and compassionate nature. Danielle, who was also a Unitarian minister, was a woman of ambition and adventure, always seeking new experiences. The Shaughnessy's were advocates for an open marriage, a lifestyle choice where partners agree it's acceptable to have sexual relationships outside of their marriage. This was symbolized by an upside-down pineapple sticker on their SUV, a symbol of the swinger lifestyle. They were open and proud of their lifestyle, hoping to foster a community built on the principles of sex and love without restrictions and acceptance of different ways of living. They were featured in a 2010 documentary called Love Unlimited, Polyamory in America, where they shared their experiences and beliefs about non-monogamy. They also ran a blog where they discussed topics such as spirituality, sexuality, and social justice. Their views on love and relationships made them stand out in Orlando, a city buzzing with life due to its attractions like Disney World and Universal Studios, which were drawing crowds eager to experience the new wizarding world of Harry Potter that had opened the previous year. Amidst this backdrop of fantasy and excitement, the Shaughnessy's pursued their dream of a progressive community. However, their unconventional life was not without its challenges. Evan and Danielle navigated the complexities of their open marriage while juggling responsibilities as parents and professionals. They were determined to live authentically, despite societal norms that often clashed with their values. As July 2011 unfolded, the Shaughnessy's found themselves at a crossroads, their lives entangled in a web of love, betrayal, and addiction. Their story is a stark reminder of the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility and the unforeseen consequences that can arise from pushing the boundaries of sexual relationships. On the evening of July 15, 2011, a horrific crime shattered the peace and tranquility of a suburban neighborhood in Orlando, Florida. The Shaughnessy family, known for their progressive and unconventional lifestyle, became the victims of a brutal and senseless murder. Their bodies were discovered by their 15-year-old daughter, Caitlin, who had just returned from a summer camp in North Carolina. She was greeted by a nightmarish scene of blood and carnage. As she walked into the living room, she was greeted by a scene of unimaginable horror. There, on the floor, lay the naked bodies of her parents, covered in blood and stab wounds. They had been viciously attacked by an unknown assailant who had inflicted multiple injuries on their chests, necks, and faces. The living room was a bloody mess, with furniture overturned and blood spattered on the walls and carpet. Caitlin was overcome with shock and terror as she realized that her parents were dead. She immediately called 911, sobbing and screaming for help. Her frantic voice was recorded by the dispatcher, who tried to calm her down and get more information. "My parents are dead. They're dead. There's blood everywhere. Please, 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 help me," Caitlin cried. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late to save the victims. Caitlin was taken to a nearby hospital, where she was treated for shock and trauma. She was later placed in the care of her aunt, who flew in from New York. The brutal slaying of the Shaughnessy couple sent shockwave through the Orlando community, especially among their friends and fellow members of the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, were described by their friends and family as loving, compassionate, and adventurous people who wanted to create a more inclusive and accepting world. They had no known enemies or conflicts, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. Who would want to kill them, and why? These were the questions that haunted the investigators, who would face a complex and challenging case. Within minutes of receiving the frantic 911 call on July 15, 2011 from Caitlin Shaughnessy, the Orlando Police Department dispatched a team of officers to the scene of the crime. The Shaughnessy home, located in the affluent Baldwin Park neighborhood, was cordoned off as a potential homicide site. The first responders, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, entered the house with caution, unsure of what they would find inside. What they witnessed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The living room, decorated with modern furniture and colorful artwork, was soaked with blood, the furniture overturned. On the floor, the corpses of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy lay naked, their bodies riddled with multiple stab wounds. The couple, who had been married for 20 years, had been brutally murdered in their own home. The police quickly assessed the situation and called for backup and medical assistance. They also tried to comfort Caitlin, who was in a state of shock and trauma. She was taken to the Orlando Regional Medical Center, where she was treated for minor injuries and psychological distress. She was later joined by her aunt, who flew in from New York to take care of her. The investigators quickly searched for any signs of forced entry, robbery, or struggle, but found none. The house was in order, except for the bloody carnage in the living room. The murder weapon, a knife, was nowhere to be found. The only clue they had was a partial fingerprint found on the door handle, which they hoped would match someone in their database, along with a faint footprint on the carpet, possibly belonging to the killer. Detective Domingo was baffled by the motive and the identity of the murderer. Who would want to kill the Shaugnessys, a well-liked and respected couple in the community? What was the reason behind this savage and senseless act of violence? They had no enemies or conflicts, as far as anyone knew, which made their murder even more baffling and disturbing. The police vowed to find the killer and bring justice to the Shaughnessy family, who had lost two of their own in a senseless and savage act of violence. The police had a first suspect in their sights, Caitlin Shaughnessy, the 15-year-old daughter of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Caitlin, who had discovered her parents' bodies after returning from a summer camp in North Carolina, was the only person in the house at the time of the murder. She was also the one who called 911, alerting the authorities to the horrific crime. The police wondered if she had a motive to kill her parents, who had a history of inviting strangers into their bed for sex as part of their unconventional lifestyle. They also questioned her alibi, which was based on the testimony of her camp counselors and fellow campers. The police interrogated Caitlin, hoping to find cracks in her story or signs of guilt. Caitlin, however, maintained her innocence, insisting that she had nothing to do with her parents' deaths. She cooperated with the police, providing them with access to her phone, computer, and social media accounts. She also agreed to take a polygraph test, which she passed. Caitlin, who was in a state of shock and grief, expressed her anger and confusion at being accused of such a heinous act. She also broke down in tears as she mourned the loss of her beloved parents. She was supported by her aunt, Edwina, who flew in from New York to take care of her. She also received counseling and therapy as she tried to cope with the trauma and the stress of the investigation. Caitlin, who was a bright and cheerful girl, had her life turned upside down by the tragic events that unfolded. She was a sophomore at Lake Highland Preparatory School, where she was an honors student and a member of the drama club. She had a passion for music and theater and dreamed of becoming a Broadway star. Caitlin, who had no history of violence or mental illness, was a victim of a brutal crime that robbed her of her family and her innocence. She was also a suspect in a murder investigation that threatened to ruin her reputation and her future. The police turned their attention to Dominic and Allison Rothman, close friends of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy and fellow practitioners of the open marriage lifestyle. The Rothmans, both in their 40s, were successful professionals and parents of 2. Dominic was a lawyer and Allison was a real estate agent. They had met the Shaughnessy's at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had bonded over their shared interest in polyamory, the practice of having multiple consensual romantic and sexual relationships. The couples had become inseparable, spending weekends together, even going on vacations as a blended family. They had also appeared in the 2010 documentary Love Unlimited, Polyamory in America, where they had discussed their views and experiences on non-monogamy. The police interrogated the Rothmans, wondering if they had any motive or involvement in the brutal murders of their friends. They asked them about their whereabouts on the night of the crime, their relationship with the victims, and their knowledge of any enemies or threats. The Rothmans cooperated with the police, providing them with alibis, phone records, and testimonies from other witnesses. They also denied any role in the killings, expressing their shock and sorrow at the loss of their friends. They claimed that they had a loving and respectful romantic and sexual relationship with the Shaughnessy's, and that they had no reason to harm them. They also said that they were unaware of any conflicts or problems that the Shaughnessy's had with anyone else. The Rothmans, who had lived a harmonious yet unconventional life, saw their dreams shattered by the tragic events that unfolded. They were not only grieving for their friends, but also facing suspicion and scrutiny from the authorities, the media, and the public. They were also worried about the impact of the investigation on their children and their careers. The Rothmans, who had embraced a lifestyle of freedom and sexual exploration, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of violence and mystery. The mystery of the Shaughnessy murders took a dramatic turn on July 25, 2011, when the Orlando police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, made a stunning discovery. In a remote wooded area, about a mile away from the Shaughnessy residence, they unearthed a knife that was covered in blood and dirt. The knife, a 10-inch chef's knife that had been purchased from a Walmart store in Orlando on July 14, 2011, the day before the murders, matched the description of the murder weapon given by the medical examiner. The knife had been used to inflict multiple stab wounds to the chest, neck, and face of Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who had been killed in their home on July 15, 2011. The police seized the knife and sent it to the crime lab for analysis. The results confirmed their suspicions. The knife had traces of the victim's blood and DNA, as well as the DNA of another person. The police ran the DNA profile through their database, hoping to find a match. They hit the jackpot. The DNA belonged to Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man with a criminal record and a history of drug abuse. The police had a new person of interest in the case, and they wasted no time in tracking him down. The police had found a possible killer, and they had the proof to back it up. The discovery of the knife was a major breakthrough in the case, as it provided the police with a solid lead. But still, there were questions. How had Steve met the Shaughnessy's? Was it at a swingers club, and had he been invited to join them for a night of sex? Had he snapped and stabbed them to death in a drug-fueled frenzy? The police had a person of interest in their sights, Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man whose sedan was seen near the Shaughnessy residence on the night of the murder. Steve, an ex-felon with a troubled past and a history of drug abuse, became the prime suspect after his DNA was found on the knife that was used to kill Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy. The Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates who were stabbed to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, tracked down Steve to a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he was staying in a room that contained more evidence of his involvement in the crime. The police surrounded the motel and knocked on the door of his room. Steve, who was high on bath salts at the time, opened the door and saw the police. He panicked and tried to run, but the police tackled him and arrested him. That night they interrogated him, trying to get him to confess and explain his motive. Steve, however,
denied any involvement in the gruesome crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaughnessy's and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He expressed his anger and frustration at being accused of such a heinous act, casting down on the authorities' suspicions. Steve, who had lived a life of addiction and crime, was facing the most serious question of his life. Had he killed the Shaughnessy's in a drug-fueled frenzy? The shocking truth behind the Shaughnessy murders was finally revealed. The killer was none other than Steve Ballywick, a 54-year-old man who had been high on bath salts, a dangerous synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Bath salts, which mimic the effects of cocaine and methamphetamine, can cause paranoia, hallucinations, and aggression. Steve had met Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, at a swingers club in Orlando, where they had invited him to join them for a night of sex at their home. Unbeknownst to them, Steve had taken bath salts before arriving at their house. In a drug-induced frenzy, he attacked them with a knife that he had bought from a Walmart store the day before. He stabbed them repeatedly, mutilating their faces and bodies. He then fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of blood and evidence. The police, who had been investigating the case for 10 days, found the knife buried in a nearby wooded area, where it had Steve's DNA and the victim's blood on it. They arrested him and searched his room, where they found more proof of his guilt: a receipt for the purchase of the knife, a pair of blood-stained jeans and shoes, and a bag of bath salts. Steve, who had a criminal record and a history of drug abuse, denied any involvement in the crime, claiming that he had never met the Shaughnessy's and that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He was lying, and the police had the DNA evidence to prove it. Steve, who had betrayed the trust of the Shaughnessy's and killed them in a drug-fueled rage, was facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and the wrath of an angry public, who were outraged and horrified by his actions they had seen on TV or online. The final chapter in the Shaughnessy murder case was written in a Florida courtroom, where the killer, Steve Ballywick, faced the consequences of his actions. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Miles Ocampo, a veteran of high-profile cases, presented a strong case against Ballywick, who had stabbed Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy to death in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011. Ocampo showed the jury the gruesome photos of the crime scene, the bloodstained knife that was used as the murder weapon, and the DNA evidence that linked Ballywick to the killings. He also played the 911 call made by the victim's daughter, Caitlin, who had discovered her parents' bodies, and the testimony of the police officers who had arrested Ballywick at a motel in Kissimmee, Florida, where he had been staying with a bag of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. Ocampo portrayed Ballywick as a cold-blooded killer who had betrayed the trust of the Shaughnessy's, who had invited him to join them for a night of sex and had killed them in a drug-fueled frenzy. He asked the jury to deliver justice for the Shaughnessy family, who had suffered a devastating loss. The defense attorney, Mitchell Raimundo, a public defender who had taken on Ballywick's case, argued for a different verdict. He claimed that Ballywick was not guilty by reason of insanity and that he had been under the influence of bath salts, which had caused him to lose touch with reality and act impulsively. He said that Ballywick had a history of mental illness and drug abuse and that he needed treatment, not punishment. He appealed to the jury's compassion and understanding and asked them to spare Ballywick's life. The victim's family, who had been following the trial closely, watched as the jury deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. They found Ballywick guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a mix of emotions to the courtroom. Some felt that the verdict was too lenient and that Ballywick deserved the death penalty. Others felt that the verdict was fair and that Ballywick would pay for his crimes for the rest of his life. The impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of all involved, forever altering their perception of the world. The trial of Steve Ballywick, the bath salts killer who brutally murdered Evan and Danielle Shaughnessy, the Unitarian ministers and open marriage advocates, in their Orlando home on July 15, 2011, left a lasting impact on the lives of those who were touched by the tragedy. Caitlin Shaughnessy, the 15-year-old daughter of the victims, who had found their mutilated bodies, was traumatized by the horrific ordeal. She sought solace and therapy in the support of her extended family, who had long presumed her parents dead. She also received an outpouring of sympathy from the public, who donated over $100,000 to a fund set up by the Miami Herald to help her with her education and future. Dominic and Allison Rothman,
The close friends of the Shaughnessy family and fellow proponents of the non-monogamous lifestyle were scarred by the suspicion cast upon them by the police and the media. They distanced themselves from the open marriage scene, which had been growing in popularity in Florida and across the country. They focused on healing their own relationship and coping with the loss of their friends. The police, led by Detective Eugene Domingo, who had worked tirelessly to solve the case and bring the killer to justice, were forever marked by the horrors they witnessed. They continued their efforts to combat the rising threat of bath salts, a synthetic drug that had been linked to several violent incidents in Florida and across the country. They also praised the bravery and cooperation of the witnesses in the victim's family who had helped them with the investigation. And the Shaughnessy family, who had been estranged from Evan and Danielle for years, were forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones. They found strength in their shared memories and the love that remained. They also learned to accept and respect the choices that Evan and Danielle had made and the legacy that they had left behind. Lawrence Peters, a 50-year-old man, was the proud owner of a thriving swimming pool supply company in the city of San Mateo in the Bay Area of Northern California. Known throughout the community for his business acumen, Lawrence was a devoted husband of 20 years to his wife Denise and a loving father to his Stanford student daughter, Jayla. He also adored his role as dog daddy to his beloved Shih Tzu, Richard Davies. Lawrence's aspirations revolved around expanding his business and providing a comfortable life for his family. September 2010 was a time of both innovation and tragedy for the residents of San Mateo. While Lawrence was planning to expand his business, the city was shaken by the San Bruno pipeline explosion, a disaster that gripped headlines and hearts alike. It was a stark reminder of life's unpredictability, echoing the unforeseen calamity that would soon befall Lawrence himself. Lawrence's business, Aqua Pools, had gained a reputation for its top-notch products and exceptional customer service. His success had not come easy, though. Years of hard work and dedication had transformed Aqua Pools into a trusted brand in the swimming pool industry. Lawrence's unwavering commitment to quality and his passion for innovation had earned him the respect of both his peers and his clients. As the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, his latest pool cleaning robot, the AquaSweep 3000, was set to be the star attraction at the local pool and spa expo. Lawrence believed that this revolutionary device would revolutionize the pool maintenance industry, making the tedious task of cleaning pools a thing of the past. Tragically, Lawrence's ambitions were cut short. What was initially thought to be a severe illness revealed itself as something far more sinister: murder. The investigation into his death would uncover a web of deceit that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined, turning the Peters' idyllic life into a true crime case. On September 15, 2010, a serene day in San Mateo, California, the local community was struck by a harrowing event. Lawrence Peters, a 50-year-old entrepreneur known for his thriving swimming pool supply business, Aqua Pools, faced an untimely demise. The businessman, admired for his dedication to family and commerce, succumbed to what was initially believed to be a severe illness in his hospital room, leaving behind a legacy of success and a bewildered community. The illness that claimed Lawrence's life had taken hold 3 weeks prior, its symptoms escalating rapidly, confounding medical professionals. It was during these critical moments that his wife, Denise Peters, was by his side, witnessing his struggle. In his final moments, Lawrence uttered a puzzling phrase: "Was it my wife or my girlfriend?" Words that would later echo through the corridors of the investigation. Denise, who had shared 2 decades of marriage with Lawrence, was engulfed by a wave of emotions. Her reaction was a complex tapestry of shock, sorrow, and a hint of suspicion, reflecting the dual nature of her husband's last words. Despite the turmoil within, she promptly notified the hospital staff, clinging to a sliver of hope for Lawrence's survival. The news of Lawrence's passing reverberated beyond the confines of the hospital. In a town still reeling from the recent San Bruno pipeline explosion, this personal tragedy added to the collective sense of loss. The incident, which had dominated headlines just days earlier, now shared space with the mysterious circumstances surrounding Lawrence's death. As the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that Lawrence's demise was not a mere twist of fate, but the result of foul play. The community, which had once seen Lawrence as a pillar of entrepreneurial spirit, now grappled with the grim reality that his life had been deliberately cut short. In the backdrop of this personal tragedy, the world continued to turn, a stark contrast to the somber mood that had settled over San Mateo. The case of Lawrence Peters, a man who had aspired to elevate his business to the heights of such household names, had instead become a subject of true crime lore, leaving behind a family, a pet, and a tale of intrigue that would captivate and confound all who heard it. The investigation into the death of Lawrence Peters, a prominent businessman, began in earnest on September 15, 2010. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying arrived at the San Mateo hospital where Lawrence had breathed his last. The room, a sterile environment typical of medical facilities, showed no immediate signs of criminal activity. Yet the detectives were not convinced this was a natural death. As they combed through the room, the detectives took note of every detail: the IV stand, the beeping monitors now silent, and the personal effects that seemed untouched. They collected samples, knowing that the smallest clue could be the key to solving the case. The initial medical reports were vague, but toxicology would later confirm their suspicions. Lawrence had been poisoned. The question of who could commit such a heinous act loomed large. Lawrence was a well-respected figure, his company Aqua Dynamics a known name in the South Bay area. He was a family man with a wife and a daughter, and even his pet Shih Tzu, Richard Davies, who was a beloved fixture in his life. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying faced a daunting task. They needed to piece together Lawrence's final weeks, scrutinize his personal and professional relationships, and construct a timeline that could lead them to the perpetrator. The community watched, waited, and wondered who among them could be responsible for such a betrayal. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives would find themselves delving into a complex web of deceit, where business rivalries and personal vendettas blurred the lines between friend and foe. The case of Lawrence Peters was not just a local crime story, it was a narrative that would capture the attention of true crime enthusiasts. In Lawrence Peters' murder, all eyes turned to his wife, Denise Peters, as the prime suspect. At the age of 52, Denise managed a vegan bookstore in downtown San Mateo, California. She was not just Lawrence's wife, but as a published author of a popular young adult sci-fi novel, Althea and the Federation of Light, Denise was a figure of cultural significance in her own right. The police interrogated Denise with a sense of urgency, trying to uncover any possible motive for the murder. As they delved into her background, they discovered that Denise and Lawrence had been married for 20 years, seemingly living a life of wedded bliss. However, beneath the surface, there were whispers of marital discord. According to the American Center for Family Relationships, 85% of married Americans have cheated on their spouse, and Denise was no different. They discovered that Denise had been having an affair with a local businessman, Jamie Trevelyan. Jamie, an 85-year-old entrepreneur who owned a chain of successful coffee shops in the Bay Area, was known for his charismatic personality and connections within the community. The police believed that this affair could be the key to understanding the motive behind Lawrence's murder. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives uncovered a series of sexually explicit text messages exchanged between Denise and Jamie during the weeks leading up to Lawrence's death. These messages hinted at a strained relationship between Denise and her husband, with discussions about leaving Lawrence and starting a new life together. The detectives also discovered that Denise had taken out a life insurance policy on Lawrence just a few months before his death, raising further suspicions. To gather more evidence, the police interviewed friends, family, and employees of both Denise and Lawrence. They discovered that Lawrence had found out about the affair before his illness and confronted Denise about it. This revelation had caused significant tension in their marriage, leading many to believe that Denise had a motive to eliminate Lawrence. As the investigation continued, the police sought to corroborate Denise's alibi during the time of Lawrence's death. They reviewed surveillance footage from the hospital and interviewed hospital staff who had interacted with Denise during that period. However, there were no solid leads or evidence to conclusively prove or disprove her involvement in the crime. As the detectives delved deeper, they considered every possibility. Was a crime of passion a result of a love triangle hinted at by Lawrence's cryptic last words? Or was it a calculated move to gain control of Lawrence's successful business, Awkward Dynamics? The answers were not forthcoming. As the investigation into the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters unfolded, another suspect emerged from the shadows. Dr. Francesca Lualhati, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence had met his untimely demise, became the focus of intense scrutiny. The revelation that Dr. Lualhati was Lawrence's secret girlfriend sent shockwaves through the community and added a new layer of complexity to the case. Dr. Lualhati was a respected physician, known for her dedication and expertise in the field of internal medicine. She had been working at San Mateo Hospital for 5 years, earning the trust and admiration of her colleagues. Friends and coworkers described her as intelligent, hardworking, and compassionate. However, beneath the surface, a web of secrets was about to unravel. The police wasted no time in bringing Dr. Lualhati in for questioning. The interrogation room was tense as detectives O'Reilly and Yane delved into the doctor's personal life, searching for any possible motive for the murder. Dr. Lualhati vehemently denied any involvement, her anger palpable as she defended her innocence. During the interrogation, it was revealed that Dr. Lualhati and Lawrence had been involved in a clandestine sexual affair for over a year. Their relationship had blossomed in the shadows, hidden from prying eyes. The detectives probed deeper, trying to understand the dynamics of their secret romance. They discovered that the affair had been fraught with tension and secrecy, as Lawrence struggled to balance his commitment to his wife and family with his desire for a passionate connection with Dr. Lualhati. As the investigation continued, the detectives uncovered a series of text messages exchanged between Lawrence and Dr. Lualhati in the weeks leading up to his death. These messages painted a picture of a troubled relationship filled with jealousy, suspicion, and betrayal. Lawrence had confided in a close friend about his fears that Dr. Lualhati was becoming increasingly possessive and volatile. The detectives also discovered that Dr. Lualhati had recently purchased a bottle of a powerful sedative, commonly used in hospitals for anesthesia. This raised suspicions about her possible involvement in Lawrence's death. However, Dr. Lualhati maintained that the sedative was intended for professional use and vehemently denied any sinister intentions. As the investigation reached its critical juncture, the police were left with more questions than answers. Was Dr. Lualhati a scorned lover seeking revenge? Or was she an innocent bystander caught in a web of deceit? The truth remained elusive, hidden behind a veil of secrecy and betrayal. The investigation into the mysterious murder of Lawrence Peters took a dramatic turn on September 20, 2010, when a crucial piece of evidence was discovered. The weather that day was gloomy, mirroring the somber mood of the investigation team as they delved deeper into the case. Detectives O'Reilly and Ying were meticulously combing through the office of Dr. Francesca Lualhati, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence had tragically passed away and his secret lover. It was during this search that they stumbled upon a vial of radium hidden among the doctor's belongings. Radium, a highly radioactive substance, was once used in various medical treatments and industrial applications. Its discovery in Dr. Lualhati's office sent shockwaves through the investigative team, raising serious questions about her possible involvement in Lawrence's death. To fully understand the significance of this finding, it is important to delve into the background of radium and its potential implications in a murder case. Featured in the Oscar-winning film Oppenheimer, radium emits harmful radiation, which can cause severe health issues, including cancer. Its usage in medical treatments has been largely phased out due to its dangerous nature. The discovery of the vial of radium in Dr. Lualhati's possession raises several intriguing questions. How did she acquire this highly restricted substance? What was her motive for possessing it? And most importantly, could radium have been the deadly poison that claimed Lawrence's life?
As the investigation team delves deeper into Dr. Lualhadi's involvement, they are meticulously examining her personal and professional connections. They are leaving no stone unturned in their quest for the truth. Interviews with colleagues, patients, and acquaintances of Dr. Lualhadi are being conducted to shed light on her character and possible motives. The discovery of the vial of radium injected new life into the investigation, providing a potential breakthrough in unraveling the mystery behind Lawrence Peters' murder. Detectives O'Reilly and Ng were determined to follow every lead, meticulously piecing together the puzzle of this perplexing crime. As the investigation intensifies, the truth inches closer to the surface. Will Dr. Lualhadi's connection to the radium vial be the key that unlocks the secrets of Lawrence's untimely demise? In the investigation into the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters, a new suspect emerged. Lyle Deacon, a 35-year-old nurse at the hospital in San Mateo, California, where Lawrence tragically passed away. Unbeknownst to his colleagues, Lyle has a dark past as an ex-felon from Minnesota, where he committed a series of fatal poisonings at a previous hospital. The police were now focusing their attention on Lyle, exploring his personality, dreams, and potential motives in order to uncover the truth behind Lawrence's untimely demise. Lyle Deacon, a tall and wiry man with a brooding demeanor, had been working at the hospital for just over a year. Colleagues described him as introverted and mysterious, often keeping to himself during his shifts. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail when it came to patient care, but little did anyone suspect the darkness that lurked beneath his calm exterior. During the police interrogation, Lyle vehemently denied any involvement in Lawrence's murder. He claimed that his troubled past was behind him and that he had turned his life around. However, the investigators were not convinced and delved deeper into his background. The detectives discovered that Lyle had been released from prison just a few months before he started working at the San Mateo Hospital. His criminal record revealed a history of poisoning patients at a hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota, which resulted in multiple deaths. The media had dubbed him the Midwest Menace during the trial that followed. As the investigation progressed, the police uncovered a disturbing pattern. It was revealed that Lyle had a fascination with toxic substances and had been secretly researching various poisons online. They also discovered a hidden stash of chemicals in his apartment, including a vial of cyanide, a deadly poison. The detectives meticulously combed through Lyle's work history, interviewing former colleagues and patients from the Minnesota hospital. They found chilling similarities between the poisonings that occurred there and Lawrence's death. The victims had all exhibited similar symptoms, and the timeline of events matched up. The evidence against Lyle Deacon was mounting, but the investigators knew they needed more to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They continued to gather witness statements, comb through financial records, and analyze phone records for any connections to Lawrence or the other suspects. As the investigation into Lawrence Peters' murder intensified, the police remained determined to uncover the truth and bring the perpetrator to justice. With Lyle Deacon now firmly in their sights, the detectives were leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice for Lawrence and his grieving family. After an intense investigation, the police finally cracked the case of Lawrence Peters' murder. The mastermind behind this heinous crime had been identified as none other than Dr. Francesca Lualhadi, a 39-year-old doctor at the hospital where Lawrence tragically passed away. The motive behind this shocking act of violence stems from a web of deceit and betrayal. It was revealed that Dr. Lualhadi was not only Lawrence's secret girlfriend, but also harbored deep feelings of anger and resentment towards him as a result of her severe case of codependency syndrome. In a fit of rage and vengeance, she decided to poison him, putting an end to his life and shattering the dreams of his family. The evidence against Dr. Lualhadi was compelling. On September 20, 2010, the police made a breakthrough discovery in her office. Hidden away, they found a vial of radium, a highly toxic substance that can cause severe harm to the human body. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team, providing a crucial link between Dr. Lualhadi and the murder of Lawrence Peters. The arrest of Dr. Lualhadi took place on a stormy evening, reminiscent of the dark cloud that had loomed over Lawrence's family since his untimely demise.
The police, acting swiftly and decisively, apprehended the doctor, who was taken aback by her own arrest. The moment was captured by the local news vans of KGO and KNTV, with cameras flashing and reporters clamoring for the latest details on this sensational case. As the news of Dr. Lualhadi's arrest spread, Lawrence's family experienced a mix of relief and grief. Relief that the person responsible for their loved one's murder had been brought to justice, but also grief for the loss they had suffered. Their lives will never be the same, but at least they found solace in knowing the truth about what happened to Lawrence. This shocking crime and its subsequent investigation served as a reminder that even in seemingly ordinary lives, dark secrets can lurk, leading to tragic consequences. The story of Lawrence Peters' murder will forever be etched in the annals of true crime, a cautionary tale of betrayal and the pursuit of justice. The trial that followed the shocking murder of Lawrence Peters in September 2010 was a gripping courtroom drama that captivated many true crime geeks in the Bay Area. Dr. Francesca Lualhadi, the mastermind behind Lawrence's untimely demise, faced the consequences of her heinous act as the prosecution presented a compelling case against her. Prosecutor Bertram Holbert-Toole, a seasoned legal expert known for his meticulous approach, skillfully outlined the motive behind the murder. He painted a picture of a woman consumed by anger and betrayal, seeking revenge against a man she once loved. With the help of expert witnesses and compelling evidence, Holbert-Toole established a strong case against Dr. Lualhadi. Defense attorney Lisa Betchworth, known for her tenacity and ability to create doubt, fought tooth and nail to establish reasonable doubt. Betchworth questioned the credibility of the evidence, pointing out potential flaws in the investigation. She argued that the vial of radium found in Dr. Lualhadi's office could have been planted by someone else with malicious intent. Despite her efforts, the weight of the evidence against Dr. Lualhadi proved too substantial to overcome. Throughout the trial, Lawrence's grieving family sat in the courtroom, seeking justice for their beloved husband and father. Their emotions ran high as they listened to the testimonies and examined the evidence. The pain of their loss was palpable as they clung to the hope that justice would be served. The trial lasted for weeks, with the media closely following. News outlets such as the San Mateo Tribune and the local TV station, Channel 7 News, provided daily updates on the proceedings. The courtroom was packed with reporters, eager to capture every moment of the trial for the public. After careful consideration of the evidence presented by both sides, the jury deliberated for several days. On a tense afternoon, the verdict was delivered. Dr. Francesca Lualhadi was found guilty of the murder of Lawrence Peters. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and grief as Lawrence's family finally received the justice they had longed for. The sentencing that followed left a lasting impact on both the murderer and the victims' families. Judge Lee Thornburg, known for her no-nonsense approach to justice, handed down a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in, leaving Dr. Lualhadi with no chance of redemption. The trial of Dr. Francesca Lualhadi and the subsequent verdict and sentencing marked the end of a tragic chapter in the lives of Lawrence Peters' family. The nation watched as justice was served, and debates about the adequacy of the punishment and the concept of justice raged on. After the dramatic conclusion of the trial, the lives of all those involved took a significant turn. Denise Peters, Lawrence's wife, was faced with the harsh reality of her husband's infidelity and the pain of losing him. She sought solace in the support of her close-knit community in San Mateo, California, who rallied around her during this difficult time. Dr. Francesca Lualhadi, the mastermind behind Lawrence's murder, faced the consequences of her actions. She was sentenced to serve time in the California State Women's Prison, where she would spend her days reflecting on the choices that led her down a dark path. Lawrence's family and friends slowly began to heal, finding solace in the cherished memories they had of him. They organized a memorial service to celebrate his life and honor his legacy. The service took place at the Stanford Memorial Church, a place Lawrence held dear to his heart. Friends and family shared heartfelt stories and anecdotes, reminiscing about his kindness, generosity, and love for his family. In the months following the trial, Denise made the difficult decision to sell Lawrence's swimming pool supply company. She wanted to start anew and create a different future for herself and her daughter. In the years that followed, Lawrence's family and friends slowly rebuilt their lives. They found solace in the memories they shared and the knowledge that justice had been served. While the pain of losing Lawrence would never fully fade, they were determined to honor his memory by living their lives to the fullest and cherishing the time they had together. And so concludes the tragic tale of Lawrence Peters, a man whose dying words sparked a murder investigation that unraveled a web of secrets and betrayal. Join us next time as we delve into another captivating true crime case. Stay tuned for more episodes of True Crime Case Files, where we uncover the darkest mysteries. In the wealthy town of Norwalk, Connecticut, Barbara Broslow, a devoted stay-at-home mom and wife, aged 36, dedicated her time to caring for her two children, Mikey and Bubbles, and supporting her husband, David Broslow. She took pride in her role as a homemaker, finding joy in her family. Barbara's dreams revolved around creating a loving and harmonious environment for her loved ones. Despite the challenges she faced in her personal life, Barbara maintained a positive outlook, trying to keep the peace in her family. Barbara was a woman of routine. Her days were filled with household chores, cooking delicious meals for her family, and tending to the needs of her children. She had a particular fondness for baking, spending hours in the kitchen perfecting her famous chocolate chip cookies. In March of 1988, Barbara's life took an unexpected turn. Rumors began to circulate in their small suburban neighborhood about a mysterious man who had recently moved to town. His name was Mark Cassavetes, a charismatic and enigmatic figure. Mark was known for his charm and good looks, which made him the center of attention wherever he went. Barbara's path crossed with Mark's when they both attended a local charity event. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and they soon found themselves entangled rumors in a passionate affair. Gossip of affair became the talk of the town, with whispers and obscene stories spreading like wildfire. Little did Barbara know that rumors of her possible affair would have dire consequences. The events that unfolded in the following months would shatter the tranquility of her suburban life and leave a lasting impact on the community. On the fateful morning of March 12, 1988, the quiet suburban neighborhood of Pinecrest Hills in Norwalk, Connecticut was about to be shaken to its core. As the sun timidly peeked over the horizon, casting an eerie glow on the dew-covered lawns, a neighbor stumbled upon a scene straight out of a nightmare. Patty Myers, a middle-aged woman known for her friendly demeanor and love for gardening, had ventured out for her daily morning walk. As she strolled past the Broslow household, a sense of unease settled upon her. The usually bustling home, filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, was eerily silent. Curiosity got the better of Patty, and she decided to investigate further. Approaching the front porch, she noticed the morning newspaper, untouched and abandoned. It struck her as odd, as Barbara Broslow was known for her punctuality and love for staying informed. An unsettling feeling crept up Patty's spine, and she hesitantly pushed open the front door. The air inside the house felt heavy, as if a storm was brewing. Patty cautiously made her way through the familiar rooms, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, she stumbled upon a sight that would haunt her for the rest of her days. In the pristine kitchen, where delicious meals were prepared with love, lay the lifeless body of Barbara Broslow. Her once vibrant eyes stared vacantly into the distance, forever frozen in a state of terror. Blood adorned the pristine white tiles, a stark contrast to the innocence that once permeated the room. Patty's hands trembled as she reached for the kitchen phone, hastily dialing emergency services. The voice on the other end of the line struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Barbara Broslow, a pillar of the community known for her warm and nurturing nature, had met a gruesome and untimely demise within the confines of her own home. News of the shocking discovery spread like wildfire through Pinecrest Hills. The tight-knit community, usually abuzz with gossip about the latest fashion trends or local bake sales, was now consumed by fear and uncertainty. The murder of Barbara Broslow had shattered their illusion of safety, leaving them vulnerable and searching for answers. As investigators descended upon the Broslow household, meticulously combing through every inch for clues,
The residents of Pinecrest Hills held their breath. Who could have committed such a heinous act? Was it a random act of violence, or was there something more sinister at play? The Norwalk Police Department wasted no time in launching a thorough investigation into the heinous murder of Barbara Broslow. Detective Indra Romert and Detective Stuart Teamkill, seasoned investigators with a reputation for cracking even the toughest cases, were assigned to lead the inquiry. Arriving at the crime scene, the detectives were met with a chilling sight. The Broslow household, usually a place of warmth and love, had been transformed into a macabre tableau. The kitchen, where Barbara should have been preparing meals for her family, now bore the scars of a violent crime. Bloodstains, like dark omens, marred the pristine surfaces. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards under the detectives' cautious steps. The investigators meticulously combed through the house, leaving no stone unturned. They carefully examined every inch of the crime scene, collecting evidence and piecing together the puzzle of Barbara's untimely demise. The walls echoed with the soft hum of their conversations as they discussed theories and brainstormed possible leads. As they sifted through the evidence, the detectives discovered a number of intriguing clues. A single bullet casing, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, hinted at the weapon used to snuff out Barbara's life. They also found a shattered vase, its shards scattered across the floor, suggesting a struggle had taken place. The detectives meticulously bagged and tagged each item, knowing that even the smallest detail could hold the key to unlocking the truth. Outside the Broslow household, the investigation expanded. Detective Romert and Detective Teamkill interviewed neighbors, hoping to gather any information that could shed light on the events leading up to the murder. They spoke to Patty Myers, the neighbor who had made the gruesome discovery, and noted down her harrowing account. They also reached out to Mark Cassavetes, discovering that rumors of an affair were just that. As the detectives meticulously pieced together the evidence, the weight of the case hung heavy on their shoulders. The clock was ticking, and they knew that time was of the essence. As the chilling case of Barbara Broslow's murder unfolded, the spotlight turned towards her husband, David Broslow. At 40 years old, David was an accountant by profession, known for his charming demeanor and ambitious drive. On the surface, he appeared to be a loving and devoted spouse, but as the investigation deepened, a dark and sinister secret began to emerge. The police wasted no time in interrogating David, determined to uncover any possible motives for such a heinous act. They meticulously combed through his personal and professional life, seeking answers that would shed light on the tragedy that had befallen the Broslow family. During the interrogation, the detectives confronted David with evidence that contradicted his claims of innocence. They presented him with phone records that showed numerous late-night calls to a mysterious number traced back to a payphone outside a local diner. The detectives also discovered a hidden compartment in David's car containing a stack of love letters addressed to a woman named Karen, a colleague at his workplace. As the pressure mounted, David's calm facade began to crumble. The once charming man grew visibly agitated, his voice trembling as he vehemently denied any involvement in his wife's murder. However, his attempts to protect his own interest became increasingly transparent to the seasoned detectives. The investigation took an unexpected turn when a witness came forward, claiming to have seen David arguing with Barbara at a local bar just days before her death. The witness, also named Karen, recalled hearing heated exchanges between the couple, with David's voice filled with anger and frustration. This revelation added another layer of suspicion to David's already shaky alibi. As the investigation into David Broslow continued, the detectives dug deeper into his financial records, uncovering a series of questionable transactions. They discovered that David had been embezzling funds from his workplace, a prestigious accounting firm in downtown Norwalk. This revelation painted a picture of a man desperate to cover his tracks, willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his facade of success. The investigation into the murder of Barbara Broslow took a startling turn when another person of interest emerged, Leanne Portmanteau, the Broslow family's babysitter and a senior at the local high school. At just 18 years old, Leanne was known for her youthful innocence and naive charm. However, beneath her seemingly innocent facade lurked a not-so-secret romantic obsession for David Broslow, Barbara's husband.
Leanne had been babysitting for the Broslow family for over a year, developing a close bond with Barbara and the children, Mikey and Bubbles. She idolized Barbara, admiring her nurturing nature and the loving environment she had created for her family. But it was David who captured Leanne's attention, fueling her dreams of one day becoming his bride. As the investigation unfolded, detectives discovered a series of secret love letters written by Leanne to David, expressing her deep affection and desire for him. These letters painted a vivid picture of a young girl infatuated with an older man, yearning for a love that seemed unattainable. The detectives carefully analyzed the letters, searching for clues that could link Leanne to the murder of Barbara. Detective Indra Romert and Detective Stuart Teamkill delved deeper into Leanne's background, interviewing her friends, teachers, and acquaintances. They discovered that Leanne had become increasingly jealous of Barbara, viewing her as an obstacle standing in the way of her romantic fantasies. Friends recalled Leanne's obsession with true crime stories and her fascination with cases involving love triangles, often discussing them with a morbid curiosity. The detectives also uncovered evidence that Leanne had been researching firearms and their potential effects on the human body. They found a stack of magazines, including a March 1988 issue of True Crime Monthly, which featured an article on infamous murder cases. This discovery raised suspicions about Leanne's intentions and her possible involvement in Barbara's murder. Furthermore, witnesses reported seeing Leanne near the Broslow household on the day of the crime. One neighbor, Mrs. Karen Johnson, stated that she saw Leanne lurking around the property, peering through the windows with an intense gaze. Another witness claimed to have seen Leanne leaving the area in a hurry, her face flushed and her hands trembling. The police, now armed with substantial evidence and witness testimonies, brought Leanne in for questioning. The detectives confronted her with the love letters, the magazines, and the witness accounts. Initially, Leanne denied any involvement in Barbara's murder, insisting that her feelings for David were harmless and that she would never harm Barbara. However, as the detectives pressed her further, Leanne's composure began to crumble, revealing a young girl trapped in a web of obsession and desperation. The investigation into the murder of Barbara Broslow took a surprising twist with the emergence of a new suspect. Alex Bruce Coachman, a 17-year-old boy and the son of the Broslow family's neighbor, became a person of interest in this chilling case. Known for his nosy and intrusive behavior, Alex had a troubled history with the Broslow family. Alex's obsession with Leanne Portmanteau, the Broslow family's babysitter and his classmate at the local high school, was no secret. He had broken into the Broslow family home on multiple occasions, driven by an intense infatuation with Leanne. But it was his deep-seated resentment towards Barbara that made him a potential suspect in her murder. The police interrogated Alex, hoping to uncover his motive for such a heinous act. As the questions intensified, Alex's anger and frustration became evident. He struggled to maintain his calm facade, revealing a young man consumed by jealousy and desperation. It was discovered that Alex had been keeping a disturbing collection of newspaper clippings and photographs of Barbara. These items were found hidden in a secret compartment in his bedroom, providing a glimpse into the depths of his obsession. The clippings included articles about Barbara's involvement in the local community, her role as a dedicated mother, and her close relationship with her husband, David. Further investigation revealed that Alex had been following Barbara's every move, documenting her daily routines and interactions. He had even gone as far as to purchase a camera with a telephoto lens, allowing him to capture intimate moments from a distance. This unsettling behavior painted a disturbing picture of a young man fixated on Barbara, viewing her as a threat to his own fated lover, Leanne. As the investigation continued, the police uncovered evidence linking Alex to the crime scene. Fingerprints found on a kitchen knife matched Alex's, raising suspicions of his involvement in the murder. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Alex in the vicinity of the Broslow household on the day of the crime. The police diligently pursued every lead, leaving no stone unturned in their quest for justice. As the case gained media attention, the community was gripped by fear and disbelief. The quiet suburb of Norwalk, Connecticut, was now at the center of a shocking crime that had shattered the illusion of safety. In a shocking twist of events, the true culprit behind the heinous murder of Barbara Broslow was finally revealed to be none other than her own husband, David Broslow. The police investigation, led by Norwalk Police Detective Indra Ramert and Detective Stuart Teamkill, meticulously unraveled the web of deceit and betrayal that had engulfed the Broslow family. Driven by a toxic combination of jealousy and greed, David had orchestrated a sinister plot to end his wife's life and frame an innocent teenager, Alex Bruce Coachman, for the crime. His motive? To escape the confines of his unhappy marriage and start a new life with the family's babysitter, Leanne Portmanteau, who had become his accomplice in this chilling saga. The evidence against David was overwhelming. Through meticulous forensic analysis, the police were able to connect him to the murder weapon, a .38 caliber revolver found hidden in the attic of their suburban home. The gun, traced back to a local pawn shop, had been purchased by David just weeks before the crime took place. The bullet casings recovered from the crime scene matched those fired from the weapon, leaving no doubt as to David's guilt. But it wasn't just the physical evidence that sealed David's fate. The police also uncovered a plot between him and Leanne, detailing their plans to carry out the murder and deceive the authorities. As news of David's and Leanne's arrest spread throughout the community, shock and disbelief rippled through the quiet streets of Norwalk. The local media, hungry for a sensational story, descended upon the town, their cameras capturing the anguish and bewilderment etched on the faces of neighbors and friends. The aftermath of this tragic event left the Broslow family shattered and scarred. Barbara's children, Mikey and Bubbles, were forced to confront the harsh reality that their father, the man they once idolized, was capable of such evil. The community rallied around them, offering support and solace during this difficult time. The trial of David Broslow, the man responsible for the brutal murder of his wife Barbara, captivated the area as it unfolded in the spring of 1988. The courtroom, located in the heart of Norwalk, Connecticut, buzzed with anticipation as the prosecution and defense presented their cases. District Attorney Tom Valligance, a seasoned prosecutor known for his meticulous attention to detail, painted a vivid picture of David's motives and the calculated nature of the crime. He meticulously laid out the evidence, including the testimonies of neighbors who had heard heated arguments between David and Barbara in the months leading up to her murder. Defense attorney Michael Stevens, a charismatic lawyer with a reputation for his persuasive arguments, fought vigorously to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. He questioned the reliability of witness testimonies, suggesting that they were influenced by media coverage and the desire for justice. Stevens argued that there was no concrete evidence linking David to the crime, and that the investigation had failed to explore other possible suspects. The trial was a roller coaster of emotions for the victim's family. Barbara's parents sat stoically in the courtroom, their eyes filled with tears as they listened to the harrowing details of their daughter's final moments. Mikey and Bubbles, Barbara's children, clung to their grandparents for support, their innocence shattered by the cruel reality of their mother's murder. As the trial reached its climax, the jury retired to deliberate. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the nation waited with bated breath for the verdict. After several hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous decision: guilty. David Broslow, the man who had meticulously planned and executed his wife's murder and Leanne Portmanteau, his accomplice and lover, were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The sentencing brought a mix of relief and grief to the victim's family. While they found solace in the fact that justice had been served, the pain of losing Barbara would forever linger. The community of Norwalk, still reeling from the shock of the murder, found some closure in the knowledge that the person responsible would be held accountable for his actions. In the aftermath of the trial, the Broslow case became a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dark underbelly that can lurk behind the facade of suburban tranquility. It served as a stark reminder that evil can reside in the most unexpected places, tearing apart families and shattering lives. After the gripping trial that captivated the area, life slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy for those involved in the tragic murder of Barbara Broslow. Leanne Portmanteau, the teenage babysitter who was caught up in the web of deceit and found herself in prison, found solace in the support of her family and friends. Leanne's dreams of a future with David Broslow were shattered, and she realized the extent of his manipulation and deceit. She distanced herself from the dark memories of the past, immersing herself in her studies and extracurricular activities. With the guidance of her prison counselor, She sought therapy to help process the trauma she had endured. As for Alex Bruce Coachman, the troubled young neighbor who had harbored an unhealthy obsession with Leanne, he faced legal consequences for his intrusive behavior. The court-mandated counseling sessions aimed to address his deeply rooted issues and provide him with the necessary tools to rebuild his life. The community rallied around Alex, offering support and understanding as he worked towards redemption. As the years passed, the wounds slowly healed, but the scars remained. The Broslow family continued to honor Barbara's memory through acts of kindness and charitable donations. They established the Barbara Broslow Memorial Fund, which provided financial assistance to local families facing hardships. The fund became a symbol of hope and resilience in the face of tragedy. And so, we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files. The story of Barbara Braslow's tragic murder serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly idyllic lives. Join us next time as we delve into another captivating tale of mystery and intrigue. Danielle "Danny" Scale, a vivacious and outgoing 42-year-old woman, was widely known for her charm, wit, and remarkable success in the real estate industry. Residing in the picturesque coastal city of Newport Beach, California, Danny thrived on closing deals and took great pride in her professional achievements. However, beneath her confident exterior, Danny grappled with lingering doubts about her marriage to Jonathan Scale, her enigmatic husband, and questioned the authenticity of his intentions. In November of 2011, Danny's life was forever ended, releasing the dark secrets lurking within her seemingly idyllic marriage. The affluent community of Newport Beach, known for its luxurious estates and pristine beaches, became the backdrop for its chilling tale of deception and violence. As we delve into Danny's story, it is crucial to understand the context in which it unfolded. Newport Beach, with its gleaming yachts and upscale boutiques, had long been a haven for the wealthy and influential. Famous as the setting for the famous Fox teen drama, The O.C., the city's close proximity to Los Angeles also made it an attractive destination for those seeking a blend of opulence and tranquility. Danny, with her impeccable taste and eye for luxury, effortlessly navigated the social circles of Newport Beach. She was a regular attendee at exclusive charity galas and frequented the trendy cafes that lined the city's bustling streets. Her magnetic personality and striking beauty garnered attention wherever she went, making her a sought-after companion among the city's elite. However, beneath the glamorous facade, Danny's personal life was shrouded in uncertainty. She often confided in close friends about her concerns regarding Jonathan, her husband of just 6 months, a man whose intentions remained elusive. Despite their outwardly happy appearance, whispers of marital discord and hidden secrets circulated among Newport Beach's tight-knit community. On a chilly November evening in 2011, a peaceful neighborhood in Newport Beach, California was shattered by a heinous crime that would forever change the lives of its residents. The vibrant and bustling community, known for its picturesque beaches and luxurious lifestyle, was now engulfed in a cloud of fear and uncertainty. Danielle "Danny" Scale, a 42-year-old woman with a successful career in real estate, had become the victim of a brutal and senseless act of violence. As the news of her tragic demise spread like wildfire, shockwaves reverberated through the tight-knit community, leaving its residents in a state of disbelief. It was Robbie Matheson, a close friend, neighbor, and local fashion designer, who stumbled upon the gruesome scene that fateful evening. Robbie, known for his impeccable taste and keen eye for detail, had dropped by Danny's house for a friendly visit. Little did he know that he would soon be thrust into a nightmare. As he entered Danny's opulent home, the air was heavy with an eerie silence. The house, adorned with expensive furniture and tasteful artwork, had an unsettling stillness that sent a chill down Robbie's spine. He called out for Danny, but there was no response. Concerned, he cautiously made his way upstairs, the creaking of the wooden steps echoing through the empty hallway. Upon reaching the master bedroom, Robbie's heart sank. There, lying lifeless on the bed, was Danny. Her once vibrant and radiant presence had been extinguished, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. The sight was both shocking and heart-wrenching, and Robbie's mind raced with a flood of emotions. In a state of panic, Robbie immediately dialed 911.
his voice trembling as he relayed the horrifying discovery to the authorities. Within minutes, police cars and ambulances descended upon the quiet neighborhood, their flashing lights illuminating the darkness of the night. The once peaceful neighborhood now bore the weight of a dark secret, and its residents grappled with the realization that evil could lurk even in the most idyllic of places. November 2011, a month that should have been filled with anticipation for the upcoming holiday season, had now become a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. As news of Danny Scales' tragic death spread throughout the affluent community of Newport Beach, California, the police wasted no time in launching a thorough investigation into the chilling crime. Seasoned investigators Detective Morgan Hatoyevsky and Detective Polita Rodriguez were assigned to unravel the mystery surrounding Danny's untimely demise. Upon arriving at the crime scene, the detectives were met with a somber atmosphere that hung heavy in the air. The bedroom, once a sanctuary for Danny, now held the grim evidence of a violent struggle. With a keen eye for detail, Detective Hatoyevsky and Detective Rodriguez meticulously combed through the room, searching for any clues that could provide insight into the identity of the perpetrator. The absence of forced entry puzzled the investigators. How could someone have gained access to Danny's bedroom without leaving behind any trace? The detectives examined the windows and doors, meticulously checking for signs of tampering. They even enlisted the help of forensic experts to dust for fingerprints and collect DNA samples, hoping to find a breakthrough. As Detective Hatoyevsky and Detective Rodriguez tirelessly pursued leads and followed every possible avenue of inquiry, they remained determined to bring closure to Danny's grieving loved ones. The clock was ticking, and the pressure to solve the case mounted with each passing day. Jonathan Scale, a 55-year-old man, emerged as the primary suspect in the murder investigation of his wife, Danny Scale. With his suave demeanor and a facade of success, Jonathan managed to charm those around him, concealing his true nature as a master manipulator. As the investigation deepens, detectives are determined to uncover the truth behind Danny's tragic demise. Detective Morgan Hatoyevsky and Detective Polita Rodriguez, seasoned investigators with a wealth of experience, took charge of the case. Their first focus was Jonathan, the man closest to Danny. With their investigative instincts honed, the detectives meticulously interrogated him, hoping to peel back the layers of deception and uncover the truth. Jonathan, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur, had carefully crafted an image of success and prosperity. However, the detectives soon discovered a darker side to his seemingly perfect life. Despite being refused permission to look into his financial records, the police managed to uncover a web of deceit and mounting debts. It became clear that Jonathan's lavish lifestyle was built on a foundation of lies and borrowed money. As the detectives probed further, they unearthed a series of suspicious activities in the months leading up to Danny's murder. Bank statements revealed large withdrawals and unexplained transfers from Danny's funds, raising red flags. Witnesses also came forward, recounting instances of Jonathan's volatile temper and controlling behavior towards Danny. The investigation took a dramatic turn when an anonymous tip led the detectives to a storage unit rented under Jonathan's name. Inside, they discovered a hidden cache of evidence, including a blood-stained shirt, something he claimed was from an accident playing basketball. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigative team, providing a crucial link between Jonathan and the crime scene. The truth, hidden beneath layers of deception, was slowly being unraveled, bringing justice closer for Danny and closure for her loved ones. As the investigation into the murder of Danny Scale unfolded, another person of interest emerged, Jason J-Boy Hermosa, a 19-year-old with a taste for the finer things in life. Jason was no stranger to the affluent community of Newport Beach, California, where he was something of a modern-day male geisha to Orange County's elite. A frequent guest at high-end parties and exclusive events, his striking good looks and charismatic personality made him a sought-after companion among the elite. But behind the glamorous facade, Jason possessed a manipulative and controlling nature. He saw Jonathan Scale, Danny's husband and his current lover, as his ticket to a world of luxury. Their secret affair had been brewing for months, hidden beneath the surface of Newport Beach's pristine reputation. The affair was a dangerous game of sex and deceit, with Jason yearning for the wealth and status that Jonathan seemed to possess effortlessly.
The police, eager to uncover any connections to the crime, focused their attention on Jason. They brought him in for questioning, hoping to peel back the layers of deception and uncover the truth. Jason's response was a volatile mix of anger and denial. He vehemently distanced himself from any involvement in Danny's murder, swearing on his life that he had nothing to do with her or the heinous act. His alibi, he claimed, was attending a high-profile charity event on the night of the crime. He even provided photographs and news articles from that evening as evidence, showcasing his presence among the city's elite. The detectives scrutinized the evidence, carefully examining the photographs and articles. They cross-referenced Jason's alibi with witness statements and surveillance footage from the event. The pieces of the puzzle began to come together, painting a picture of a young man desperate to escape his own reality and immerse himself in a world of opulence. The case of Danny Scales' murder was far from over. With two suspects in the spotlight, the detectives faced the daunting task of unraveling the truth from a web of lies and deception. As they dug deeper, they would soon discover that the secrets hidden in the shadows of Newport Beach were darker and more sinister than anyone could have imagined. In a stunning turn of events, the investigation into the murder of Danny Scale took a dramatic twist when a hidden safe was discovered by Robbie Matheson, a close friend and neighbor of the victim. This breakthrough occurred on an unusually rainy day in Newport Beach, California, in November of 2011. Inside the hidden safe, the police found a treasure trove of financial records that exposed a web of deceit and fraud orchestrated by Jonathan Scale, Danny's husband. The records revealed him as the head of a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme that spanned across 6 states, involving real estate ventures, a chain of daycares, and even a network of strip clubs. This shocking revelation left the investigators in utter disbelief, as they realized they were dealing with a criminal empire far more complex than they had initially anticipated. The evidence uncovered in the safe detailed Jonathan's elaborate scheme, which had ensnared unsuspecting investors and left a trail of financial ruin in its wake. The records showed falsified documents, forged signatures, and a complex network of shell companies designed to mask the illegal activities. The police now had a clearer understanding of Jonathan's motive for silencing Danny, as she had become a potential threat to his fraudulent empire. As news of the discovery spread, media outlets seized upon the story, dubbing it the Newport Beach Ponzi scandal. Journalists delved into the intricate details of the scheme, uncovering the extent of Jonathan's fraudulent activities, revealing him to be a fake millionaire. The scandal sent shockwaves through the community, tarnishing the reputation of Newport Beach, an affluent coastal city known for its picturesque beaches and luxurious lifestyle. With the newfound evidence, the police intensified their efforts to bring Jonathan to justice. They meticulously analyzed the financial records, cross-referencing them with other ongoing investigations into similar Ponzi schemes. The collaboration between law enforcement agencies from multiple states became crucial in unraveling the full extent of Jonathan's criminal activities. The investigation into the murder of Danny Scale had now evolved into a high-profile case that captivated the nation. The media circus surrounding the Newport Beach Ponzi scandal only added to the pressure on the police to solve the murder and dismantle Jonathan's fraudulent empire. Ilea Evans, a 24-year-old activist with a strong sense of social justice, found herself entangled in the investigation surrounding the murder of Danny Scale. Ilea, known for her unwavering determination and passion for social causes, had long suspected Jonathan Scale, Danny's husband, of being involved in illicit activities. Her suspicions were fueled by rumors, later proven true, circulating in the close-knit rich community of Newport Beach, California. On a chilly November morning in 2011, Ilea was called in for questioning by the police. The interrogation room was dimly lit, casting long shadows on the walls. Detective Morgan Hatoyevsky, a seasoned investigator, sat across from her, his piercing gaze fixed on her every move. Ilea, dressed in her signature black hoodie and worn-out sneakers, maintained an air of defiance as she answered the detective's questions. She vehemently denied any involvement in Danny's murder, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and determination. "I may be an activist, but I would never resort to violence," she declared, her words echoing through the sterile room. The detective pressed on, probing for any evidence that could link Ilea to the crime. He raised his eyebrows, his skepticism evident, as he presented her with photographs taken at a protest she had organized against Jonathan's alleged fraudulent activities. Ilea's eyes narrowed, her resolve growing stronger as she explained, "I may have been vocal about his corruption, but I believe in exposing the truth through peaceful means." As the interrogation continued,
Ilea recounted her encounters with Jonathan, describing his extravagant lifestyle and the aura of power that surrounded him. She spoke of the rumors she had heard about his involvement in an interstate network of strip clubs and a chain of daycares, all part of an elaborate Ponzi scheme. Her words painted a vivid picture of a man consumed by greed and willing to go to great lengths to protect his empire. Despite the lack of concrete evidence linking Ilea to the crime, the police were determined to explore every lead. They scrutinized her alibi, interviewed her acquaintances, and searched for any connection she might have had to the murder. Ilea remained steadfast, her unwavering belief in justice propelling her forward. In a stunning turn of events, the police cracked the case of Danny Scales' murder and apprehended the culprit responsible for this heinous crime. Jonathan Scale, the victim's own husband, was taken into custody, facing charges related to her untimely demise. The breakthrough in the investigation came when a secret audio tape was discovered, capturing Danny's chilling words about her husband. "My husband is a fake millionaire." This revelation provided a crucial piece of evidence that helped connect the dots and shed light on the sinister truth behind Danny's murder. Jonathan, who presented himself as a successful entrepreneur, was revealed to be living a life built on lies and deceit. Behind his polished exterior, he had been running a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, defrauding unsuspecting thousands of victims across 6 states. Shockingly, his fraudulent activities extended beyond real estate, encompassing a chain of daycares and even a network of strip clubs. The police, armed with this newfound evidence, were able to establish Jonathan's motive for silencing his wife. By eliminating Danny, he sought to protect his ill-gotten wealth and maintain his false image as a wealthy individual. However, his carefully constructed facade crumbled when the police uncovered the truth. The arrest of Jonathan Scale sent shockwaves through the community of Newport Beach, California. This affluent neighborhood, known for its picturesque landscapes and luxurious lifestyle, was rocked by this dark and disturbing crime. The residents, who once admired Jonathan for his apparent success, are now left reeling from the realization that they were living alongside a master manipulator and a cold-blooded murderer. The courtroom was filled with anticipation as the trial of Jonathan Scale, the man accused of orchestrating the murder of his wife, Danny Scale, reached its climax. The prosecution, led by the determined and passionate prosecutor, Dana Chiu, meticulously presented a compelling case against Jonathan. The defense, represented by the skilled attorney, Reynolds Bastani, fought tooth and nail to protect Jonathan's interests. Throughout the trial, the courtroom was captivated by the testimonies of witnesses and the presentation of evidence. The prosecution called upon Detective Morgan Hatoyevsky and Detective Polita Rodriguez, the seasoned investigators who meticulously combed through the crime scene, to testify. They recounted the chilling details of the crime scene and the painstaking efforts they undertook to uncover the truth. The defense, on the other hand, sought to cast doubt on the evidence presented by the prosecution. They called upon expert witnesses to challenge the credibility of certain pieces of evidence, attempting to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. However, their efforts were met with skepticism as the prosecution skillfully dismantled their arguments.
After weeks of intense deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. Guilty. The word reverberated through the room, leaving Jonathan Scale stunned. His carefully constructed facade crumbled before his eyes as the reality of his actions sank in. The sentencing, which took place a few weeks later, marked the end of Jonathan's reign of deception. The judge, taking into account the severity of the crime and Jonathan's lack of remorse, handed down a sentence of life behind bars, a fitting punishment for a man who had shattered the lives of those who loved him. As the trial came to a close, the impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of the victims' friends and family. The trial served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of greed and the lengths some individuals would go to protect their secrets. Following the conclusion of the trial, the The lives of those involved in the case took divergent paths. Jonathan Scale, the mastermind behind the murder of his wife, faced the consequences of his heinous actions as he began his sentence behind bars. The courtroom was abuzz with a mix of emotions as the guilty verdict for his Ponzi scheme was announced, marking the end of Jonathan's reign of deception. Meanwhile, the dedicated police investigators, Detective Morgan Hatoyevsky and Detective Polita Rodriguez, continued their tireless pursuit of justice. They remained committed to ensuring that no stone was left unturned in their quest for truth. Their unwavering determination and meticulous attention to detail were instrumental in bringing Jonathan to justice. In the aftermath of the trial, the community of Newport Beach began to slowly regain its sense of security. The shocking murder had sent shockwaves through the close-knit neighborhood, leaving residents on edge. With Jonathan Scale behind bars, a collective sigh of relief could be felt as the community began to rebuild and restore its once tranquil atmosphere, but not before drawing attention to the intricacies of the criminal justice system and the devastating consequences of greed. The case of Danielle "Danny" Scale, the woman whose dying words exposed her husband's web of lies, serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. In the affluent city of Newport Beach, a community shattered by deceit and violence learned that even the most charming facade can hide the most sinister secrets. Brianna Dalton was just 18 years old when she died. She had recently graduated from Forest Park High School, where she was known for being smart and kind. Brianna loved reading and dreamed of becoming a teacher one day. She worked part-time at Barnes & Noble, where she enjoyed recommending books to customers and talking about her favorite stories. Brianna lived in Forest Park, Ohio, with her stepfather, Irving Dalton, and his new wife, Margarita. Irving was a wealthy businessman, and Margarita was much younger than him. Brianna's own mother had passed away a year earlier, which made life harder for Brianna. She often felt lonely and missed her mom a lot. Despite these challenges, Brianna was a cheerful and creative person. Her teachers at Forest Park High School always said she was a joy to have in class. She was part of the school's drama club and loved acting in school plays. Brianna's best friends often talked about how she would light up any room with her smile and positive energy. In the days leading up to her death, Brianna was busy making plans for her future. She had just attended her graduation ceremony and was excited about starting college in the fall. She had been accepted to Ohio State University and planned to study education. Brianna was looking forward to becoming a teacher and inspiring kids to love reading as much as she did. Brianna's relationship with her stepfather, Irving, was complicated. She seemed very close to him on the surface, but recently confided in her friends about how uncomfortable she felt around him. Irving was known for being charming in public but very controlling at home. Brianna sometimes told friends how she tried to avoid being alone with him as much as possible. Brianna had a bright future ahead of her and many dreams she wanted to fulfill. Her sudden death shocked everyone who knew her, leaving a hole in the hearts of her family, friends, and the community. On the morning of May 14, 2015, at around 7:30 a.m., Margarita Dalton made a shocking discovery. She walked into her stepdaughter Brianna's bedroom and found her lying on the floor, unresponsive. Margarita, who had only been married to Brianna's stepfather, Irving, for a few months, screamed in horror. The room was a mess with clothes and books scattered everywhere, making it look like a burglary had taken place. Margarita quickly called 911, her hands shaking as she dialed. She told the operator that her stepdaughter was not breathing and that it looked like someone had broken into the house. The 911 operator tried to calm her down and instructed her to check for a pulse, but Margarita was too scared to do anything more than wait for the police and paramedics to arrive. When the emergency services arrived, they found Margarita sitting on the floor outside Brianna's room, crying and holding her head in her hands. The paramedics rushed in and quickly confirmed that Brianna was dead. They noted that she had been strangled with a bra, which was found near her body. There were also signs of a struggle, with furniture overturned and items thrown around the room. Officer Jake Martinez was the first police officer on the scene. He immediately secured the area and started taking statements from Margarita. She was in shock, her voice trembling as she described how she had found Brianna. Margarita said she had been making breakfast when she realized Brianna had not come down yet. When she went to check on her, she found the terrible scene. As the news of Brianna's death spread, the local community was in shock. Friends and neighbors gathered outside the Dalton house, whispering in disbelief. The local news stations, like El Valde Channel 5, quickly picked up the story, and soon, Everyone in Forest Park knew about the tragic death of Brianna Dalton. The police arrived quickly at the Dalton house on the morning of May 14, 2015. Led by Detectives Ned Luster and James Reed, the team wasted no time in securing the area and beginning their investigation. Both detectives were well known in Forest Park for their dedication and thoroughness. Detective Luster, calm and analytical, led the team with precision. Detective Reed, although emotional at the sight of Brianna's body, focused on gathering evidence. Brianna's bedroom was a chaotic scene. Clothes, books, and other items were scattered everywhere, indicating a struggle. The bed was unmade, and the furniture was overturned. Brianna lay on the floor, and it was clear she had been strangled with a broth, which was found near her body. The detectives noted the signs of a staged burglary, meant to cover up the true nature of the crime. The detectives began their work by photographing the entire room and documenting the evidence. They collected fingerprints from the furniture, door handles, and windows. They also took samples of fibers found on Brianna's body and clothing. Forensic experts were called in to assist, using advanced tools like luminol to detect any blood traces that were not visible to the naked eye. Detective Luster interviewed Margarita Dalton, who had found Brianna's body. Margarita was still in shock, her voice shaky as she recounted the events of the morning. She explained that she had gone to check on Brianna when she didn't come down for breakfast. Margarita said she and Irving had gone to bed around 11 p.m. and hadn't heard anything unusual. The detectives also spoke with Irving Dalton. He was calm but defensive, insisting he had been at a business meeting the night before and knew nothing about the crime. He claimed he had come home late and went straight to bed.
Irving's demeanor raised suspicions, but the detectives knew they needed more evidence to confirm their theories. Outside, the community was reeling from the news. Neighbors gathered, watching as the police went in and out of the house. The local media, including WLWT Channel 5, reported on the crime, adding pressure on the police to solve the case quickly. As the day went on, the detectives continued to gather evidence. They took Brianna's phone and computer for analysis, hoping to find clues about her activities and interactions in the days leading up to her death. They also planned to review security footage from nearby homes and businesses to see if anyone had been near the Dalton house the previous night. The crime scene investigation was just the beginning of a complex and heartbreaking case that would leave a lasting impact on the Forest Park community. Irving Dalton, 58, was the first suspect the police investigated. He was a wealthy businessman known in Forest Park for his success in real estate. Irving was a tall, imposing figure who often wore expensive suits and drove luxury cars. Despite his public charm, many people described him as controlling and manipulative at home. Irving had married Brianna's mother when Brianna was just a child. After her mother's death, Irving became her legal guardian. Their relationship was strained at times and affectionate at others, but recently Brianna confided in her friends about her unease around him. There were even whispers about a romantic relationship between Irving and Brianna, which made him a key suspect in the investigation. Detective Luster and Detective Reed brought Irving in for questioning at the Forest Park Police Department. During the interrogation, Irving maintained a calm and collected demeanor. He told the detectives that he had been at a business meeting the night of Brianna's death and came home late. Irving said he went straight to bed and didn't hear or see anything unusual. The detectives pressed Irving on his relationship with Brianna. He admitted they didn't get along well but denied any wrongdoing. Irving claimed he was strict with Brianna because he wanted the best for her. Despite his composed appearance, the detectives sensed that Irving was hiding something. To understand Irving better, the police interviewed his colleagues and acquaintances. Many described him as a man who liked to be in control. His business partners mentioned that Irving could be very persuasive and often got his way in deals. However, no one had any concrete evidence linking him to Brianna's death. Irving's possible motive for harming Brianna came from the rumors about their romantic relationship. If these rumors were true, Irving might have felt threatened by the possibility of Brianna revealing his actions. This could have led him to take drastic measures to silence her. Despite his calm responses during interrogation, Irving's behavior raised suspicions. He was very careful with his answers, and the detectives noticed he avoided making direct eye contact. They also found it odd that Irving didn't show much emotion about Brianna's death, which struck them as unusual for a stepfather. The detectives decided to dig deeper into Irving's alibi. They checked with his business associates to confirm his whereabouts on the night of the murder. While his colleagues confirmed he was at the meeting, there was still a window of time unaccounted for, which kept the detectives suspicious of Irving.
Irving's controlled demeanor, the strained relationship with Brianna, and the rumors about his behavior all pointed to him as a significant suspect. The police knew they needed more evidence to build a stronger case against him, so they continued their investigation. Margarita Dalton, 23, was the next suspect the police investigated. She had married Irving Dalton shortly after Brianna's mother passed away. Margarita had worked as a waitress at Hooters before marrying Irving, and many people saw her as a gold digger. However, those close to her knew she genuinely cared for Irving, despite the power imbalance in their relationship. Margarita was a young and naive woman who often seemed out of place in Irving's wealthy world. She was insecure and anxious, aware of the whispers about her motivations. Despite her attempts to build a relationship with Brianna, the teenager kept her distance, making Margarita's life in the Dalton household lonely and challenging. Detectives Luster and Reed brought Margarita in for questioning. During the interrogation, Margarita was visibly distressed, her eyes red from crying. She told the detectives she had found Brianna's body that morning and had immediately called 911. Margarita explained that she had been making breakfast when she realized Brianna hadn't come downstairs, prompting her to check on the teenager. Margarita described her relationship with Brianna as difficult. She admitted that Brianna never warmed up to her and often ignored her attempts to bond. Margarita said she had tried to be a good stepmother but felt like she was always failing. Despite this, she insisted she had nothing to do with Brianna's death. The detectives asked Margarita about the night of the murder. Margarita said she and Irving had gone to bed around 11 p.m. She claimed they didn't hear anything unusual during the night. Margarita's alibi seemed straightforward, but the detectives needed to verify it. To understand Margarita better, the police spoke with her friends and former coworkers. They described her as sweet but easily influenced. Margarita's friends mentioned that she often felt overwhelmed by her new life with Irving and struggled to fit in. However, no one believed she was capable of harming Brianna. The detectives considered Margarita's possible motive. Given her young age and fragile state, they wondered if Margarita might have felt threatened by Brianna or if she had acted out of jealousy. However, Margarita's genuine distress during questioning made the detectives doubt this theory. Despite her emotional responses, the police had to explore every possibility. They checked Margarita's phone records and looked for any signs of conflict between her and Brianna. They also reviewed security footage from the Dalton house and nearby areas to see if Margarita's account of the night matched up. Margarita's clear distress and consistent story made the detectives question her involvement in Brianna's death. However, they knew they had to continue their investigation thoroughly, ensuring no stone was left unturned in their search for the truth. Vance Stoltz, 26, was Brianna's boyfriend and the third suspect the police investigated. Vance had a troubled past, including a history of drug addiction. He worked on and off as a mechanic, but often struggled to keep a job due to his erratic behavior. Despite his issues, Brianna had seen something in Vance and tried to help him turn his life around. Vance lived in a small RV on the outskirts of Forest Park. He was known to be passionate but also volatile, and his relationship with Brianna had its ups and downs. Friends described their relationship as intense, with both deep affection and frequent arguments. Detectives Luster and Reed brought Vance in for questioning. During the interrogation, Vance appeared nervous and agitated. He fidgeted in his chair and avoided making eye contact. When asked about the night of Brianna's murder, Vance said he had been at home watching old replays of Days of Our Lives and had fallen asleep early. He claimed he had not seen Brianna for a few days before her death.
The detectives pressed Vance about his relationship with Brianna. Vance admitted they had argued recently about his drug use, but he insisted he would never hurt her. He became emotional, repeatedly saying he loved Brianna and wanted to get clean for her. Despite his passionate responses, the detectives noticed inconsistencies in his story. To gather more information, the police spoke with Vance's neighbors. They mentioned hearing loud noises and shouting coming from his apartment on the night of the murder. One neighbor said she saw Vance leave his apartment around midnight and didn't see him return until the early hours of the morning. The detectives also reviewed Vance's phone records. They found several missed calls and text messages from Brianna on the night of her murder. The messages showed that Brianna was worried about Vance and wanted to check on him. This contradicted Vance's statement that he had not seen or heard from Brianna for days. The possible motive for Vance was his unstable relationship with Brianna and his struggle with addiction. The detectives considered that Vance might have acted out of jealousy or anger during an argument. However, without concrete evidence linking him directly to the crime, they couldn't arrest him yet. The detectives decided to search Vance's apartment. They found some suspicious items, including a torn piece of fabric that matched the material of Brianna's shirt. They also discovered drug paraphernalia, indicating Vance had been using drugs recently. Although Vance's behavior and the evidence found raised suspicions, the detectives knew they needed more to make a solid case. They continued to investigate, hoping to uncover the truth about Brianna's tragic death and bring her killer to justice.
On May 16, 2015, 2 days after Brianna's death, new evidence came to light. It was a rainy Saturday morning, and Detective Luster received a call from a local resident named Greg who lived a few houses down from the Dolphins, said he had found something suspicious in his backyard. Detective Luster and Detective Reed quickly drove to his house. He was waiting for them on his porch, holding an old worn-out shoe. He explained that he had found the shoe near his garbage bins that morning. The shoe looked out of place, and Greg thought it might be connected to the recent crime. The detectives took the shoe back to the station for further examination. They also asked Greg if he had seen anyone near his house on the night of the murder. Greg said he had been away on a business trip and had only returned that morning. He hadn't noticed anything unusual before he left. At the station, forensic experts examined the shoe. They found traces of mud and grass, which suggested it had been worn recently. More importantly, they discovered a small blood stain on the inside of the shoe. The shoe was a men's size 11, which matched the size of shoes Irving Dalton wore. The detectives also checked the shoe against the list of items taken from Brianna's room. They found that it didn't belong to anyone in the Dalton household, raising more questions about its origin. Excited by this breakthrough, the detectives decided to search the area around Greg's house more thoroughly. They hoped to find more clues that could lead them to the killer. As they combed through the neighborhood, they discovered a hidden path that led from Greg's backyard to the Daltons' house. The path was overgrown with weeds and hardly noticeable, but it could have been used by someone trying to avoid being seen. The detectives also reviewed the security footage from nearby houses again, focusing on the area around Greg's house. They noticed a shadowy figure moving along the path late at night, just hours before Brianna's body was found. The footage was grainy, but it was clear enough to show that someone had used the path recently. This new evidence gave the detectives a fresh lead. They decided to re-interview Irving Dalton, pressing him about the shoe and the hidden path. Irving continued to deny any involvement, but the detectives felt they were getting closer to uncovering the truth. With the discovery of the shoe and the hidden path, the investigation took a significant turn. The detectives were now more determined than ever to find Brianna's killer and bring justice to her grieving family and friends. On May 20, 2015, the breakthrough in Brianna Dalton's case came from an unexpected source. Detectives Luster and Reed received a call from the forensic lab. The blood stain found on the shoe matched Irving Dalton's DNA. This discovery was the crucial piece of evidence they needed. Irving Dalton, 58, was a wealthy real estate businessman known for his charm in public and his controlling nature in private. He had married Brianna's mother when Brianna was a child and became her legal guardian after her mother's death. Despite his public persona, whispers about his inappropriate behavior towards Brianna had persisted. Irving had killed Brianna to hide the fact that she was pregnant with his baby, a result of their secret affair. He feared the scandal and the potential legal repercussions would ruin his reputation and destroy his marriage to Margarita. On the night of May 13, 2015, Irving went to Brianna's room to confront her. The confrontation turned violent, and he strangled her with a bra. He then staged the scene to look like a burglary gone wrong. Armed with the new evidence, the detectives planned Irving's arrest carefully. On the morning of May 21, 2015, at 7:00 a.m., they arrived at the Dalton house. Irving answered the door, surprised to see the police. Detective Luster informed him he was under arrest for the murder of Brianna Dalton. Irving tried to remain calm, but his hands shook as they cuffed him and read him his rights. Irving's reaction to his arrest was a mix of shock and resignation. He didn't resist, but kept insisting he was innocent. However, the evidence was overwhelming. The shoe with his blood, the hidden path leading from Greg Thompson's yard to the Dalton house, and the inconsistencies in his alibi all pointed to his guilt. As the news of Irving's arrest spread, Brianna's friends and family were both relieved and devastated. Margarita was in disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the fact that her husband was a murderer. Brianna's friends expressed a mix of sorrow and anger, mourning the loss of their kind-hearted friend and the betrayal by someone who was supposed to protect her. The local community in Forest Park was shaken by the revelations. News outlets like WLUT Channel 5 covered the story extensively, and the case became a talking point on social media. People were shocked that someone so respected could commit such a heinous act. The arrest of Irving Dalton brought a sense of closure to the case, but it was clear that the road to justice for Brianna was just beginning. The detectives knew the trial would be a long and difficult process, but they were determined to see it through and ensure that Brianna's killer was held accountable. The trial of Irving Dalton began on August 10, 2015, drawing significant attention from the local community and media. The courtroom was packed with reporters from WLUT Channel 5 and other news outlets. Brianna's friends and family were present, hoping for justice. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Cole Era, a determined and experienced lawyer in his early 40s. Era presented a compelling case against Irving. He detailed the evidence, including the shoe with Irving's blood, the hidden path, and the inconsistencies in Irving's alibi. Era argued that Irving killed Brianna to hide the fact that she was pregnant with his baby, fearing the scandal would ruin his reputation and marriage. The defense attorney, Militia Bean Turner, was a skilled and persuasive lawyer in her late 30s. Turner argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that Irving was being unfairly targeted. She suggested that someone else, like Vance Stoltz, Brianna's troubled boyfriend, could have committed the crime. Turner emphasized Irving's reputation and success as a businessman, portraying him as a victim of false accusations. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll on Brianna's family and friends was evident. They listened to the details of her death and Irving's betrayal, struggling to hold back tears. Margarita Dalton, Irving's young wife, was a constant presence in the courtroom, looking pale and distraught. On December 5, 2015, after weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was tense as the foreman read the decision. Guilty of first-degree murder, Irving showed little reaction, maintaining his stoic demeanor, while Brianna's family and friends expressed a mixture of relief and sorrow. The sentencing phase followed, and on December 12, 2015, the judge handed down a life sentence without the possibility of parole. District Attorney Era called the sentence just and necessary for the heinous crime Irving committed. Defense Attorney Turner expressed disappointment but respected the jury's decision. The verdict and sentencing had a profound impact on everyone involved. Brianna's family felt a sense of justice but also deep grief over their loss. Margarita Dalton was devastated, struggling to rebuild her life after discovering her husband's dark secret. Vance Stoltz, who had been a suspect, was relieved to be cleared but remained haunted by Brianna's death. The Forest Park community also felt the effects of the trial. People were shocked that someone as respected as Irving could commit such a crime. The case sparked conversations about trust, betrayal, and the importance of looking out for one another. The trial's conclusion marked the end of a long and painful journey for those who loved Brianna. While justice had been served, the memory of Brianna Dalton would always be a reminder of the tragic events that unfolded in May 2015. After the trial of Irving Dalton, life in Forest Park slowly began to return to normal, though the scars left by Brianna Dalton's tragic death would linger for years to come. For Brianna's family, the verdict brought a sense of closure, yet their grief remained palpable. Brianna's mother, who had passed away years before, was remembered fondly by neighbors who attended a memorial service at the local church. The family held a small gathering afterward, where they shared stories and memories of Brianna. Margarita Dalton, who had stood by Irving throughout the trial, struggled to come to terms with the reality of her husband's actions. She sought solace in her friends and church community, finding strength in their support. Over time, Margarita began to rebuild her life, though she remained haunted by the betrayal she had endured. Vance Stoltz, Brianna's boyfriend and briefly a suspect in the case, faced his own challenges. He entered rehab shortly after the trial, determined to overcome his addiction and honor Brianna's memory. With the support of his family and friends, Vance made progress, taking steps toward a healthier, more stable life. In May 2016, a year after Brianna's death, the community gathered at Forest Park High School for a memorial service. Friends, neighbors, and classmates shared memories of Brianna, lighting candles in her honor. The ceremony provided comfort to those who had known Brianna and served as a reminder of the importance of cherishing loved ones. As time passed, Brianna Dalton's story faded from the headlines, replaced by new events and challenges facing the world in 2015. Yet for those who had known her, Brianna's kindness, creativity, and dreams of becoming a teacher remain vivid memories, a legacy that would endure. Julie Lewis was 18 years old. She lived in Payeth,
Idaho, a small town known for its friendly people and beautiful landscapes. Julie was in her senior year of high school and was known for her beauty and intelligence. She dreamed of going to college and starting a new life away from the troubles she faced at home. Julie's life had been tough. Her mother died of cancer when Julie was only 14. This loss left a big hole in her life. Her father, Tony Lewis, was a police officer who worked long hours. Julie often felt lonely and started seeking the company of older men who could offer her the stability and comfort she missed. Some people thought Julie was manipulative, using her looks and charm to get what she wanted. Others believed she was just trying to survive in a world that had not been kind to her.
In school, Julie was an honor roll student. Her friends described her as ambitious and determined, always talking about her plans for the future. She wanted to study business at the University of Idaho and one day own her own company. Julie's teachers saw her potential and often praised her hard work and dedication. In the days leading up to her death, Julie was busy preparing for her high school graduation. She bought a new dress for the occasion and was excited about the graduation ceremony. She talked to her friends about their plans for the summer. They planned to visit the local mall, go to the movies, and spend time at the nearby Snake River. Julie also had a part-time job at a local diner where she saved up money for college. She was well-liked by her coworkers and customers for her friendly and outgoing personality. Despite her troubles, Julie tried to stay positive. She had a close-knit group of friends who supported her. They often hung out at local spots like the Payette Skate Park and the community swimming pool. Julie was also involved in her school's drama club, where she enjoyed acting and working behind the scenes. Julie's dreams were big, but her life was cut short.
She had plans and ambitions, but she never got the chance to see them through. Her death shocked the small town of Payette, leaving everyone wondering what could have been. On the morning of June 5, 2012, Tony Lewis came home after his night shift as a police officer. Comey expected to find his daughter Julie still asleep. Instead, he found a horrifying scene. Julie's lifeless body was on the floor of her bedroom. The room was in disarray, with items scattered everywhere. Julie had been brutally attacked. She was bludgeoned with a rock from outside their home and then strangled with a belt. Tony was shocked and devastated. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Fighting through his grief and panic, Tony called 911 to report the crime. His voice trembled as he told the dispatcher what had happened. Despite his training and experience as a police officer, nothing could have prepared him for this. The news of Julie's murder spread quickly through the small town of Payette. Payette hadn't seen a murder in over 20 years, and the community was in shock. Julie was well known and liked by many. Her death was a terrible blow to the town. When the first responders arrived, they found Tommy outside, distraught and in tears. The sight inside Julie's room was gruesome. Blood was spattered on the walls, and the signs of a struggle were clear. Julie's face was bruised, and there were ulcers around her neck from the belt used to strangle her. The rock used in the attack lay nearby, covered in blood. The paramedics pronounced Julie dead at the scene. Tony could only watch in despair as they did their job. He was overwhelmed with grief, unable to comprehend how someone could do this to his daughter. Neighbors started to gather outside the Lewis home, drawn by the flashing lights of the police cars and ambulances. They whispered among themselves, trying to understand what had happened. Reporters from local news outlets soon arrived, their cameras and microphones capturing the tragic scene. They interviewed some of the neighbors, who spoke of their shock and sadness. Julie's friends and classmates were devastated by the news. Many of them had seen her just the day before at school, laughing and talking about their future plans. Now those plans would never come true. The school counselors were brought in to help the students cope with their grief. The entire town mourned the loss of a bright, young life taken too soon. The police arrived quickly at the Lewis home on the morning of June 5, 2012. Leading the investigation was Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts, a seasoned investigator known for her thoroughness and dedication. She had solved many tough cases in her career and was determined to find justice for Julie. The crime scene was horrific. Julie's bedroom was in chaos, with items strewn everywhere. Blood spattered the walls and signs of a violent struggle were evident. Julie's body lay on the floor, her face bruised and neck, marked from the belt used to strangle her. The rock used to bludgeon her lay nearby, covered in blood. Detective Roberts and her team began their meticulous work. Detective Roberts, along with Officer Olson Benson, a local officer with 15 years on the force, started by securing the area to prevent contamination of evidence. They took photos of the entire scene, capturing every detail.
They used luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and collected fingerprints from various surfaces. The investigators also bagged the rock and belt as key pieces of evidence. Detective Roberts noticed several things right away. The window in Julie's room was slightly open, suggesting someone might have entered or exited through it. There were scratches on the windowsill, possibly from the killer climbing in or out. Outside, footprints in the garden soil indicated someone had recently been there. The team interviewed Tony Lewis, who was still in shock. He recounted finding Julie and calling 911. His grief was palpable, and Detective Roberts felt his pain as a father. Despite his emotional state, Tony provided all the information he could, hoping it would help catch his daughter's killer. The local news outlets, including the Payette Times, covered the story extensively. Reporters interviewed residents and followed every development closely. The town was gripped by fear and sadness, unable to believe such a brutal crime could happen in their peaceful community. As the investigation continued, Detective Roberts and her team worked tirelessly. They analyzed the evidence collected, hoping to find clues that would lead them to the murderer. They checked for any connections Julie might have had with known criminals and looked into her recent activities. The community's support for the police was strong. People brought food and coffee to the officers working long hours. Local businesses put up posters offering rewards for information leading to the arrest of Julie's killer. The town of Payette, once quiet and serene, now united in their quest for justice. The first suspect the police investigated was Harold Henderson. Harold, aged 70, was a retired used car salesman who lived in Payette. He was well known in the town for his flashy personality and competitive nature. Despite his age, Harold had a reputation for being charming and wealthy, making him popular in the local social scene. He was a widower, living alone in a large house filled with memorabilia from his younger days. Harold's connection to Julie Lewis came to light quickly. It was discovered that he had been romantically involved with Julie. Some residents of Payette knew about their relationship and whispered about the odd pairing. Harold's interest in Julie raised eyebrows, but in a small town, people often keep secrets. Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts and Officer Olson Benson brought Harold in for questioning on June 6, 2012. They wanted to understand the nature of his relationship with Julie and determine if he had a motive for her murder. Harold arrived at the police station dressed neatly, his demeanor calm but slightly defensive. During the interrogation, Harold admitted to his relationship with Julie but denied any involvement in her death. He claimed they had a consensual sexual relationship, started only after she turned 18, and that he cared deeply for her. However, Harold's competitive streak, especially with his twin brother Alan, suggested a possible motive. Harold and Alan had a long history of rivalry, and both had been vying for Julie's attention. Harold's calm and confident demeanor began to waver as Detective Roberts pressed him on his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Harold stated he was at home, watching a rerun of NCIS on CBS. He insisted he had no reason to harm Julie and was shocked by her death. However, his answers were vague, and he couldn't provide a solid alibi. The police also investigated Harold's financial records. They found that he had been giving Julie money regularly, which could have been a source of tension if he discovered she was manipulating him. Harold's phone record showed multiple calls and messages to Julie in the days leading up to her death, indicating frequent communication. Despite his denials, the police felt Harold had the motive and opportunity to commit the crime. His history of competitiveness with Alan and his romantic involvement with Julie painted a troubling picture. The investigators kept a close eye on Harold, looking for any inconsistencies in his story and waiting for any evidence that might link him directly to the murder. As the investigation continued, Harold remained a prime suspect. His flamboyant personality and competitive nature, coupled with his involvement with Julie, made him a central figure in the case. The town of Payette watched closely as the police worked to uncover the truth behind Julie's tragic death. The second suspect in the investigation was Alan Henderson, Harold's twin brother. Alan, also 70 years old, was a retired high school history teacher. Known for his intellect and passion for teaching, Alan was respected and well-liked in Payette. He had a reputation for being level-headed and scholarly, a stark contrast to his more flamboyant brother. Alan had never married and was often seen as a bachelor who enjoyed his solitude. He spent much of his time reading and participating in community events. Despite his age, Alan had a magnetic personality that attracted people of all ages. He was particularly fond of attending local book clubs and giving lectures at the town library. The police discovered that Alan, like his brother, had also been romantically involved with Julie Lewis. This revelation shocked many in the town, as Alan was viewed as a more reserved and dignified figure. Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts and Officer Olson Benson brought Alan in for questioning on June 7, 2012, to understand his relationship with Julie and his potential motives. Alan arrived at the police station looking composed, dressed in a tweed jacket that hinted at his scholarly background. During the interrogation, he admitted to his relationship with Julie, but insisted it was platonic. He explained that he enjoyed her company and found her bright and ambitious. Alan's affection for Julie was evident, but he denied any romantic involvement. Detective Roberts pressed Alan about his whereabouts on the night of Julie's murder. Alan stated he was at home, working on a lecture for the local historical society. He mentioned reading a book about the Civil War, a topic he was passionate about. However, his alibi was weak, as he lived alone and had no witnesses to confirm his story. Alan's demeanor during the interrogation was calm but saddened. He expressed disbelief that Julie could be dead. He cooperated fully with the police, providing them with his phone records and access to his home. The investigators found nothing suspicious at his residence, but they continued to scrutinize his interactions with Julie. The police also interviewed people who knew Alan. His colleagues and former students spoke highly of him, describing him as a dedicated teacher who cared deeply about education. Despite his calm exterior, the possibility of betrayal by Julie could have triggered a strong emotional response. As the investigation progressed, Alan remained a key suspect. His scholarly nature and apparent innocence contrasted sharply with the dark motives uncovered. The police continued to explore every lead, determined to uncover the truth behind Julie's murder and the Henderson brothers' involvement. The third suspect in Julie Lewis' murder investigation was her father, Tony Lewis. Tony, 45, was a police officer in Payette, Idaho. Known for his protective nature, Tony was a well-liked figure in the community. He had become close to the Henderson brothers over the years, often acting as a mediator between the two. Tony's connection to Julie was evident, as he was her father and lived next door to Alan Henderson. The police had to consider every possibility, even the uncomfortable one that Tony might be involved. Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts and Officer Olson Benson decided to question Tony on June 8, 2012. Tony was still reeling from the shock of finding his daughter's body. When he arrived at the police station, he looked tired and grief-stricken. During the interrogation, Tony recounted his actions on the night of the murder. He had been working a night shift, which he often did to provide for Julie after the death of her mother. Tony insisted he had no reason to harm his daughter and was devastated by her death. Detective Roberts asked Tony about his relationship with the Henderson brothers. Tony admitted he knew about their interest in Julie and had tried to keep the peace between them. He expressed his frustration over their rivalry, which had caused tension in the neighborhood. Despite this, Tony was adamant that he had no involvement in the crime. The police looked into Tony's background and found no history of violence or misconduct. His colleagues at the police department spoke highly of him, describing him as a dedicated officer and loving father. However, the investigators had to consider the possibility that Tony's protective instincts might have driven him to a breaking point. Tony provided his phone records and cooperated fully with the investigation. The record showed he had been on duty at the time of the murder, but the police needed to verify this alibi thoroughly. They checked surveillance footage from the police station and confirmed Tony's presence there during the critical hours. The police also interviewed neighbors and friends of Tony. Most described him as a caring father who was deeply affected by his wife's death and determined to give Julie a better life. Some, however, mentioned that Tony had become more stressed and irritable in recent months, possibly due to the pressure of raising a teenager alone. Despite Tony's grief and cooperation, the police had to keep all possibilities open. His close proximity to the crime scene and his protective nature were significant factors in the investigation. Detective Roberts and her team continued to examine every piece of evidence, knowing that solving the case required looking at every angle, no matter how painful. As the investigation unfolded, Tony remained under scrutiny. The small town of Payette watched closely, hoping for answers and justice for Julie. The police were determined to find the truth, and Tony's involvement, if any, would be uncovered through their relentless efforts. On June 10, 2012, around 3:00 p.m., new evidence came to light. The weather was warm and sunny, typical for Payette in early summer. Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts received the call from a local hiker who had found something unusual near the Snake River. He had been walking his dog when he noticed a small bag hidden under some rocks. Detective Roberts and Officer Olsen Benson rushed to the scene. They found a small black bag containing a blood-stained shirt and a pair of gloves. The items were immediately taken into evidence. The police believed these items could be crucial in solving Julie's murder. Back at the station, the forensic team examined the evidence. The blood on the shirt matched Julie's. This was a significant breakthrough. The gloves were tested for fingerprints, and the results came back with a match to Harold Henderson. This finding shifted the focus back to Harold, who had previously denied being near the crime scene. Detective Roberts and her team re-examined Harold's alibi. They discovered inconsistencies in his story. Further analysis of his phone records showed he had been near Julie's house at the time of the murder, contradicting his claim of being at home watching TV. The new evidence prompted the police to search Harold's home again. This time, they found a hidden compartment in his garage with several items that raised suspicion, including a second pair of gloves and a belt similar to the one used to strangle Julie. These discoveries painted a clearer picture of Harold's involvement. As the investigation deepened, the police interviewed more witnesses. They found out that Harold had been seen arguing with Julie the day before her death. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, reported hearing raised voices and seeing Harold leave Julie's house looking angry. With the new evidence, Detective Roberts felt confident they were closing in on the truth. The police brought Harold in for another round of questioning. This time, his demeanor was less confident. Confronted with the evidence, Harold became defensive and struggled to maintain his earlier calmness. The forensic team continued to analyze the evidence, looking for any additional clues. They used advanced techniques like DNA testing and fiber analysis to ensure nothing was overlooked. The detailed investigation paid off, as more links between Harold and the crime were uncovered. By the end of the week, the police were confident they had enough evidence to make an arrest. The discovery of the bag near the Snake River had been the breakthrough they needed. The town of Payette waited anxiously for justice to be served. On June 12, 2012, the police were ready to make an arrest. Detective Kelly Breezy Roberts had pieced together the evidence pointing to Harold Henderson as the murderer. Harold, 70, was a retired used car salesman known for his flamboyant personality and competitive nature. His charm and wealth made him a popular figure in Payette, but his rivalry with his twin brother Alan and romantic involvement with Julie Lewis revealed a darker side. Harold had been competing with Alan for Julie's affection. He had given Julie money regularly and felt betrayed when he discovered her plan to blackmail him and Alan. On the night of June 4, Harold confronted Julie at her home. The argument turned violent, leading Harold to bludgeon her with a rock he found outside and strangle her with a belt. Driven by anger and betrayal, Harold committed the brutal murder. Detective Roberts had discovered inconsistencies in Harold's alibi and found crucial evidence, like the blood-stained shirt and gloves, linking him to the crime. The DNA and fingerprints on the gloves match Harold's, and the blood on the shirt was Julie's. Surveillance footage also placed Harold near Julie's house at the time of the murder. On the morning of June 12, Detective Roberts and Officer Olsen Benson went to Harold's house to arrest him. They arrived at 9:00 a.m., and Harold was at home. When they told him he was under arrest for Julie's murder, Harold looked shocked but didn't resist. He was handcuffed and taken to the police station. At the station, Harold was formally charged with murder. His reaction was one of disbelief and anger. He insisted he was innocent, claiming the evidence was planted. Despite his protests, the overwhelming evidence convinced the police of his guilt. Julie's father, Tony Lewis, was informed about the arrest. He was devastated but relieved that the police had found the person responsible for his daughter's death. The town of Payette, which had been closely following the investigation, felt a mix of shock and relief. They couldn't believe someone they knew so well could commit such a heinous crime. As Harold was taken into custody, the town hoped for justice for Julie. Her friends and family gathered to support each other, remembering Julie for her beauty, intelligence, and dreams of a better future. The arrest brought some closure, but the pain of losing Julie would remain with them forever. The evidence against Harold was strong, and the police were confident they had the right person. The case now moved to the courts, where Harold would face trial for his actions. The community waited anxiously for the trial, hoping for a verdict that would bring justice for Julie. Harold Henderson's trial began on July 15, 2012, in Payette County Court. The courtroom was filled with Julie Lewis' family and local residents eager to see justice served. The case received extensive coverage from local news outlets, including the Payette Times and KTVB Channel 7, which kept the community updated on the trial's progress. The prosecutor, Emily Hackle Matchwork, 38, was known for her strong courtroom presence and dedication to seeking justice. Hackle Matchwork argued that Harold Henderson was guilty of brutally murdering Julie Lewis. She presented a clear case, showing evidence such as the blood-stained shirt and gloves found near the Snake River, Harold's fingerprints on the murder weapon, and surveillance footage placing him at Julie's house on the night of the crime. Hackle Matchwork described the crime as an act of rage and betrayal, emphasizing how Harold's rivalry with his twin brother and his manipulative behavior towards Julie led to her tragic death. The defense attorney, Drew Nils, 45, was a respected lawyer with a reputation for defending high-profile cases. Nils argued that the evidence against Harold was circumstantial and that his client was being falsely accused. He suggested that Harold's emotional state and previous arguments with Julie did not prove guilt. Mills attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's evidence, arguing that it was possible someone else could have committed the murder. Julie's family attended the trial every day. Her father, Tony Lewis, appeared exhausted but resolute. He was seen comforting Julie's friends and family, who were deeply affected by the trial. The emotional weight of the case was evident as testimonies about Julie's life and dreams were presented in court. After several weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury deliberated and reached a verdict on August 5, 2012. Harold Henderson was found guilty of first-degree murder. The verdict was met with a mixture of relief and sorrow from the courtroom. Julie's family, while devastated by her loss, felt a sense of justice had been achieved. Sentencing took place on August 12, 2012. Harold was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, Honorable David Thompson, stated that the crime was particularly heinous due to its brutality and the betrayal involved. The sentence was seen by many as a fitting punishment for the crime. The trial's conclusion had a profound impact on the community. Payette, a town that had not seen such a violent crime in years, was left to heal. Julie's friends and family continued to honor her memory, focusing on her dreams and aspirations rather than the tragic end of her life. The case served as a stark reminder of the impact of violence and the importance of justice in a close-knit community. After Harold Henderson's trial and sentencing, life in Payette, Idaho, began to slowly return to normal. The town had been deeply affected by Julie Lewis' murder and the dramatic court case that followed. Payette, known for its close-knit community and small-town charm, was shaken by the violence and the betrayal that came to light. Julie's father, Tony Lewis, continued to cope with the loss of his daughter. He took a leave of absence from his job as a police officer to focus on his grief and to support Julie's memory. Tony began speaking at local schools about the importance of communication and the dangers of manipulation, hoping to prevent similar tragedies in the future. His efforts were met with support from the community, who admired his strength and resilience. Harold Henderson's life took a dramatic turn after his conviction. He was transferred to the Idaho State Penitentiary, where he began serving his life sentence. Harold's high-profile case and the nature of his crime made him a notable inmate, but he kept a low profile in prison. His flamboyant personality and competitive nature were replaced by a more subdued and reflective demeanor. The prison system provided Harold with counseling, but it did little to ease the weight of his actions. Alan Henderson, Harold's twin brother, also had to deal with the aftermath. Though he was cleared of any involvement in Julie's murder, the case had taken a toll on him emotionally. Alan withdrew from the social scene and focused on personal reflection. He continued to live in Payette, where he was known for his quiet and reserved nature. The community remained supportive of Alan, understanding that he had been a victim of his brother's actions as much as Julie's family had been. As time passed, Payette slowly moved forward. The town's recovery was marked by a sense of healing and unity, with residents coming together to support one another. The memory of Julie Lewis lived on through the scholarship and charity events, reminding everyone of her life and the impact of her tragic death. Kyle Ellerby was an 18-year-old high school senior from Carbondale, Illinois, known for his bright future both on and off the football field. As the star quarterback of Carbondale Community High School's football team, Kyle was admired by his classmates and respected by his coaches. His athletic talent had earned him the nickname Golden Boy among his peers, and he was often featured in local sports reports. He had dreams of playing college football, and several universities had shown interest in recruiting him. Kyle lived with his parents, Richard Ralph Ellerby, 48, and Cindy Ellerby, 45, in a comfortable suburban home.
Ralph, a sales manager, was a former athlete himself, having once been a promising football player before a knee injury ended his sports career. He poured his unfulfilled ambitions into Kyle, pushing him to excel in football. Cindy, once vibrant and full of life, had become increasingly withdrawn, battling alcoholism and feelings of inadequacy. The pressure of maintaining appearances weighed heavily on the family, particularly on Kyle, who felt the burden of living up to his father's high expectations. Despite his confident exterior, Kyle was a deeply sensitive young man. He struggled with his sexual identity, a secret he kept hidden from everyone, including his closest friends. The only person who knew the truth was his football coach, Robert J. McMurdo, with whom Kyle had developed a secret sexual relationship. The relationship was a source of both comfort and stress for Kyle, who feared the consequences if their affair were ever discovered. In the days leading up to his death, Kyle was focused on his future. He was preparing for final exams and looking forward to graduation. He spent hours practicing on the football field, determined to secure a college scholarship. However, the stress of maintaining his secret life took its toll. Friends noticed he seemed distracted and more withdrawn than usual. His normally bright smile was replaced by a look of worry. At home, tensions were high, with his mother's drinking spiraling out of control and his father's demands growing more intense. Kyle's last days were a mix of hope and fear as he balanced his dreams of a bright future with the shocking secrets that would ultimately lead to his tragic end. On the morning of May 12, 2014, at around 7:30 a.m., Ralph Ellerby walked downstairs into the basement of his family's home in Carbondale, Illinois, expecting to find his son Kyle getting ready for school. Instead, Ralph stumbled upon a scene that would haunt him forever. Kyle's lifeless body was sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by sports equipment and memorabilia, including the football trophies he had won over the years. The basement, usually a place of pride for the Ellerby family, had become the site of a tragic discovery. Ralph's first reaction was shock. He stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what he was seeing. The 48-year-old sales manager, who had always been so proud of his son's accomplishments, now felt a wave of panic and disbelief wash over him. He rushed to Kyle's side, desperately checking for signs of life, but it was clear that his son was gone. The boy who had been the center of his world, the one he had pushed so hard to succeed, was now lying dead at his feet. After a few moments, Ralph managed to gather himself enough to call 911. His voice was shaky and hoarse as he reported what he had found. "My son, he's not breathing," he stammered. The 911 operator tried to keep him calm, asking for details, but Ralph could barely focus on the questions. All he could think about was Kyle and the horrible realization that his son would never fulfill the dreams they had both worked so hard for. When the paramedics arrived a few minutes later, they confirmed what Ralph had already known deep down. Kyle was dead. The scene was eerily quiet, with only the sound of Ralph's heavy breathing and the distant hum of a television in the living room, which had been left on. Cindy Ellerby, Kyle's mother, drunk and still asleep upstairs, was unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded. It wasn't until Ralph's anguished cries echoed through the house that she awoke, disoriented, and still groggy from the night before. When she finally realized what had happened, her screams pierced the quiet morning, adding to the grief that was now overwhelming the Ellerby household. The Carbondale police arrived at the Ellerby residence around 8:00 a.m. on May 12, 2014, just minutes after Ralph's frantic 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Sally O'Malley, a seasoned officer known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense approach. O'Malley, 42, had been with the Carbondale Police Department for over 15 years and had handled her fair share of tough cases, but the death of a popular high school quarterback like Kyle Ellerby was sure to be one of the most challenging. When O'Malley and her team entered the basement, they found a scene that didn't quite add up. Kyle's body lay at the foot of the stairs, with a large football trophy nearby. The room was cluttered with sports equipment. Helmets, jerseys, and footballs were scattered around. But there was something about the positioning of the body and the items around it that caught O'Malley's attention. The detective noted that while Kyle's head injury appeared consistent with the fall, a lack of blood and the angle of his body suggested something more sinister. The basement was dimly lit, with only a few small windows allowing in the morning light. The walls were adorned with posters of NFL stars like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and the shelves were lined with trophies, highlighting Kyle's impressive athletic achievements. O'Malley carefully examined the scene, noting the absence of any clear signs of struggle, but her experience told her that what seemed like an accident could easily be a staged crime. As the forensics team began their work, Taking photos and collecting evidence, O'Malley focused on the heavy football trophy that was lying next to Kyle. It was large enough to inflict a fatal blow, and there were faint smudges on it that looked like fingerprints. The detective ordered it to be bagged as evidence, suspecting it could be the murder weapon. The rest of the house was searched as well. The living room still had the TV on, playing Good Morning America on ABC, while Cindy Ellerby sat on the couch in shock, a half-empty bottle of vodka on the coffee table in front of her. Ralph, who had made the initial discovery, was pacing the floor, visibly distraught but cooperating with the officers. Detective O'Malley's instincts told her this wasn't just a tragic accident. The eeriness of the scene, combined with the odd details, hinted at something far more complex. As the investigation unfolded, it would soon become clear that Kyle Ellerby's death was not what it appeared to be. The first person Detective O'Malley turned her attention to was Coach Robert J. McMurdo, the 46-year-old football coach at Carbondale Community High School. Coach McMurdo was well known in the community, not just for leading the football team to numerous victories, but also for his charismatic and authoritative presence. He had a reputation for being tough but fair, someone who could bring out the best in his players. Underneath his confident exterior, however, O'Malley suspected there might be more to the coach than met the eye. At the police station, McMurdo was cooperative but clearly nervous. He sat across from Detective O'Malley in a small, dimly lit interrogation room. The walls were bare, and the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. O'Malley began the interview by asking McMurdo about his relationship with Kyle. The coach spoke fondly of the young man, describing him as one of the most talented and dedicated players he had ever coached. With that body of his, Kyle had a natural gift, McMurdo said, his voice trembling slightly. He could read the field like no one else. I had big plans for him. But when O'Malley pressed further, asking if their relationship extended beyond the football field, McMurdo hesitated. His discomfort was palpable as he struggled to maintain his composure. He admitted he cared about Kyle, but only as a coach cares for any of his players. O'Malley wasn't convinced. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the fear of something being exposed. She then asked directly about any sexual relationship between him and Kyle, a question that made McMurdo visibly tense. His denial was immediate, but there was a quiver in his voice that O'Malley couldn't ignore. The detective then shifted the conversation to the morning of Kyle's death, asking McMurdo about his whereabouts and whether he had any contact with Kyle that day. The coach insisted he was at home preparing for practice and hadn't spoken to Kyle since the previous day. However, when O'Malley presented him with a record of sexually explicit text messages and naked pictures sent between him and Kyle, sent late the night before, McMurdo's calm demeanor began to crack. McMurdo's face went pale as he realized the evidence against him was mounting. He had a body like Adonis, he exclaimed. Robert told police he was conflicted by his romantic relationship with Kyle, which turned sexual after watching Kyle shower after a practice. He said he genuinely loved the young man, but he knew the consequences if their affair were ever discovered. Throughout the interrogation, McMurdo maintained his innocence, but his nervousness only grew. He repeatedly wiped his forehead with a handkerchief, his hands shaking slightly. Despite his efforts to appear in control, it was clear that the pressure was getting to him. O'Malley knew she had rattled him, but she also knew that without a confession or more concrete evidence, she couldn't arrest him just yet. The interrogation ended with McMurdo being released, but not before O'Malley made it clear that he was now a prime suspect in the investigation. Next, Detective Sally O'Malley turned her attention to Richard Ralph Ellerby, Kyle's 48-year-old father. Ralph was a sales manager at a local auto dealership and a well-known figure in Carbondale. He had a reputation as a proud, ambitious man who lived vicariously through his son's accomplishments. Once a star high school athlete himself, Ralph's football career was cut short by a knee injury. He had channeled all his unfulfilled dreams into Kyle, pushing him to excel on the football field. On the morning of Kyle's death, Ralph's reaction was intense. He was visibly distressed and kept asking the officers what had happened to his son. According to witnesses, he seemed more agitated than heartbroken. His concern focused on how this tragedy might affect Kyle's legacy and the family's reputation. During his interview with O'Malley, Ralph was cooperative but defensive. He spoke proudly of Kyle's achievements, emphasizing how much he had invested in his son's future. Kyle was destined for greatness, Ralph said, his voice thick with emotion. He was gonna go all the way to the NFL, and I was going to make sure of it. But as the conversation shifted to Kyle's personal life, Ralph's tone changed. He became evasive, particularly when O'Malley asked about Kyle's relationship with Coach McMurdo. O'Malley had already discovered that Ralph's and McMurdo's relationship was sexual. Ralph often attended practices, games, and even team meetings where he and the coach would discuss Kyle's progress and future. When asked if he knew about Kyle's sexual involvement with McMurdo, Ralph hesitated. He eventually admitted that he had heard rumors, but insisted he didn't believe them. However, O'Malley wasn't entirely convinced. She had evidence suggesting that Ralph knew more than he was letting on. Text messages between Ralph and McMurdo, found on Ralph's phone, vividly showed that he was aware of the relationship between his son and the coach, even planning dates for him and offering to be a lookout. In one exchange, Ralph even congratulated the coach, telling him that his sex with Kyle must have been behind his 3 touchdowns during a previous game. Despite Ralph's efforts to appear calm and collected, O'Malley noticed cracks in his composure. His voice would occasionally waver, and he seemed unusually anxious when discussing certain topics. The detective suspected that Ralph's deep-seated homophobia and fear of scandal had created a volatile mix of emotions that he was struggling to keep under control. As the interview concluded, O'Malley couldn't shake the feeling that Ralph was hiding something. His refusal to fully acknowledge the possibility of his son's involvement with Coach McMurdo, coupled with his obvious discomfort, made him a person of interest in the ongoing investigation. The final suspect on Detective Sally O'Malley's list was Cindy Ellerby, Kyle's 45-year-old mother. Cindy had once been a vibrant woman, a formed teen beauty queen with a lively personality. But by May of 2014, she had become a shadow of her former self, struggling with alcoholism and deep-seated feelings of sexual inadequacy. Her marriage to Ralph had grown strained and loveless, and she often felt overlooked in her own home, especially as Ralph focused all his attention on Kyle's football career. Cindy's descent into alcohol abuse had become well known in the community. Neighbors frequently saw her at the local liquor store, often buying bottles of cheap vodka. Her drinking had escalated to the point where she was rarely sober, leading to erratic behavior that further isolated her from friends and family. Cindy's relationship with Kyle had also deteriorated. She resented the pressure placed on him by Ralph and was deeply jealous of the close bond between Kyle and his father. On the morning of Kyle's death, Cindy had been at home. When the police arrived, they found her in a state of hysteria, alternating between sobbing uncontrollably and shouting incoherently. Her disheveled appearance and the smell of alcohol on her breath raised immediate concerns among the officers on the scene. During her interview with Detective O'Malley, Cindy was unstable and emotional. She fluctuated between anger and sadness, her responses often incoherent. O'Malley asked about Cindy's relationship with Kyle, and Cindy's answers were evasive. "Kyle was my baby," she said repeatedly, but when pressed for details about their interactions in the days leading up to his death, she struggled to provide clear answers. O'Malley also inquired about Cindy's relationship with Coach McMurdo. Cindy's reaction was telling. Her face twisted in anger, and she accused her son of taking away Coach McMurdo from her. Kyle had the mind of a hussy and the body of Tom Brady. She spat out, her words dripping with bitterness. "Why did he have to take my man?" As the interview progressed, Cindy became increasingly agitated, especially when O'Malley suggested that Kyle's death might not have been an accident. Cindy's mood swings and erratic behavior made it difficult to get a coherent narrative from her. However, O'Malley noted that Cindy's anger toward McMurdo and her jealousy of Kyle's relationship with his father seemed to be driving her emotional outbursts. Despite her unstable demeanor, Cindy remained a person of interest. O'Malley couldn't ignore the possibility that Cindy's deep-seated resentments and her deteriorating mental state might have played a role in Kyle's death. The detective left the interview with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Cindy Ellerby's troubled past and volatile emotions made her a key figure in this tragic case. On May 18, 2014, just a week after Kyle Ellerby's tragic death, a startling new development shook the town of Carbondale. It happened during Kyle's memorial service, held at the local high school gymnasium, where hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but it was Ralph Ellerby's unexpected outburst that left everyone in shock. Ralph, visibly intoxicated and overcome with emotion, stood up in the middle of the service. His words were slurred, but the message was clear. He confessed to knowing that his wife, Cindy Ellerby, had killed their son. Ralph revealed that he had helped Cindy stage the scene to look like an accident in a desperate attempt to protect their family from scandal. The crowd was stunned into silence, unable to process the magnitude of his admission. Detective Sally O'Malley, who had been attending the service to observe the family's behavior, immediately knew the investigation had just taken a critical turn. After Ralph's confession, the Carbondale Police Department quickly responded, taking Ralph into custody for further questioning. The police returned to the Ellerby household, this time with a clearer understanding of what they were looking for. Inside the home, they revisited the basement where Kyle's body had been found. With Ralph's confession in mind, the officers searched for any evidence that could corroborate his story. They discovered traces of blood that had been poorly cleaned, as well as additional fragments of the shattered trophy that had been missed during the initial investigation. Forensic experts re-examined the evidence, confirming that the blood found at the scene matched Kyle's DNA. Ralph's confession, combined with the physical evidence, painted a grim picture of the events leading up to Kyle's death. It was now evident that Cindy had struck Kyle with the trophy in a fit of rage, and that Ralph had assisted her in covering up the crime. The community was left reeling from Ralph's shocking revelation. What had once been seen as a tragic accident was now understood to be a brutal murder, meticulously concealed by the very people who should have protected Kyle the most. This new evidence and Ralph's confession brought the investigation to a critical juncture, setting the stage for a shocking arrest. Following Ralph Ellerby's shocking confession at his son Kyle's memorial service, the Carbondale Police Department wasted no time in moving forward with the investigation. On May 20, 2014, just 48 hours after Ralph's admission, the police officially identified Cindy Ellerby as the prime suspect in Kyle's murder. Cindy, a 45-year-old homemaker struggling with alcoholism, had long been a troubled figure in the community. Her erratic behavior and strained relationship with Kyle had not gone unnoticed by neighbors and friends, but the truth of her involvement in his death was still a bitter pill for many to swallow. Detective Sally O'Malley led the charge to bring Cindy into custody. The team assembled at the Ellerby household early that morning. The atmosphere was tense, with overcast skies matching the somber mood of the officers. When they arrived at the door, Cindy answered, looking disheveled and weary, as if she had aged years in the days since the memorial. Without much resistance, Cindy was placed under arrest. The weight of the moment seemed to hit her all at once, and she broke down in tears, not out of surprise, but out of resignation. She knew that the truth had finally caught up with her. As Cindy was escorted to the police car, the neighborhood was eerily quiet, with only the distant hum of morning traffic breaking the silence. Inside the station, she was formally charged with the murder of her son, Kyle Ellerby. During her initial interrogation, Cindy was emotional but cooperative, providing a detailed account of the events leading up to the murder. She admitted that on the night of Kyle's death, she had been drinking heavily. An argument with Kyle had escalated, fueled by her smoldering jealousy over his sexual relationship with Coach Murdo. In a blind rage, she grabbed one of Kyle's football trophies and struck him with it, killing him instantly. Cindy explained how Ralph, upon discovering what she had done, decided to help her stage the scene as an accident. Together, they dragged Kyle's body to the bottom of the basement stairs and scattered sports equipment around to make it appear as though he had fallen. Ralph had hoped that this would keep their family's dark secret hidden, but his conscience ultimately betrayed him. The arrest of Cindy Ellerby sent shockwaves through the community. For the Ellerby family, once admired for their success and unity, the reality of their downfall was now laid bare. The reactions of those close to Kyle were a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief, a struggle to comprehend how a mother could commit such a heinous act against her own child. Cindy Ellerby's trial for the murder of her son, Kyle Ellerby, began in late August 2014 at the Jackson County Courthouse in Carbondale, Illinois. The case quickly became the talk of the town, with local media outlets like the Southern Illinoisan covering every detail. The courtroom was packed with spectators, many of whom had known the Ellerby family for years and were eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Armthorpe, a seasoned 50-year-old attorney known for his tough stance on violent crimes, argued that Cindy's actions were premeditated. He painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and anger, unable to cope with her son's relationship with Coach Robert J. Murdo. Armthorpe emphasized the brutality of the crime, noting that Cindy had not only killed her son but had also gone to great lengths to cover up the murder with the help of her husband, Ralph. The prosecution's case was bolstered by forensic evidence and Ralph's confession, both of which left little room for doubt. On the defense side, attorney Linda Caldwell Blankenship
A 45-year-old public defender with a reputation for taking on difficult cases argued that Cindy's actions were not premeditated but rather the result of a momentary lapse in judgment fueled by alcohol and emotional distress. Caldwell Blankenship sought to portray Cindy as a victim of her circumstances, a woman struggling with addiction and mental health issues, overwhelmed by the pressures of her life. She pleaded for leniency, arguing that Cindy's actions were not those of a cold-blooded killer, but of a deeply troubled individual who needed help, not harsh punishment. Throughout the trial, Kyle's friends and teammates attended in support of the Ellerby family, their faces reflecting the pain and confusion of losing a beloved friend under such tragic circumstances. The jury deliberated for just 2 days before returning with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Cindy Ellerby was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some measure of closure to Kyle's friends and family, but the impact of the trial was profound. Cindy's sentencing left the community divided. Some felt that justice had been served, while others believed the punishment was too harsh for a woman who had clearly been struggling with her own demons. For Ralph Ellerby, the trial marked the final unraveling of his family, leaving him to face the consequences of his own complicity in Kyle's death. In the aftermath of Cindy Ellerby's trial, life in Carbondale, Illinois would never be the same for those involved. Cindy, now serving a 25-year sentence at Logan Correctional Center, had little contact with the outside world. Her time in prison was marked by isolation and regret as she grappled with the consequences of her actions. The once vibrant woman who had been a familiar face at high school football games was now a shadow of her former self, lost in the routine of prison life. Ralph Ellerby, Kyle's father, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. He sold the family home, unable to bear living in the place where his son had died. Ralph moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town, where he continued to struggle with his guilt. He had lost not only his son and wife, but also the respect of the community. Ralph, who had once been a prominent figure in Carbondale, found himself alienated and alone, with only his memories for company. His battle with alcohol worsened, and he rarely left his apartment, becoming a recluse. Coach Robert J. McMurdo, who had been at the center of the scandal, resigned from his position at the high school. The revelation of his relationship with Kyle Ellerby had destroyed his career. Despite never being charged with a crime, the damage to his reputation was irreversible. McMurdo moved out of state, trying to rebuild his life in anonymity. However, the stigma followed him, and he found it difficult to escape the shadows of his past. He took on low-profile jobs, avoiding any roles that would put him back in the public eye. The community of Carbondale, once united in support of the Ellerby family, was left divided and disillusioned. The trial had exposed the darker side of the town, shattering the image of a perfect community. In the years that followed, the memory of Kyle Ellerby's tragic death lingered, a reminder of the secrets that can tear a family and a town apart.